Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece Fates Intertwined by Demonheart 12. What if the time difference between Luffy and Robin was much smaller? What would happen if he arrived on her island somehow before the Buster Call happened? How will their presence in each other's lives affect each other? Follow their adventures as they grow together and sail the seas in hopes of achieving their dreams. I don't own anything. Adios.
A friend in need, Nami, stood over the pool in Arlong's Park that led to the ocean as she looked at it. She just killed her friend, and she was watching his body get carried away by the tides of the sea. She felt sadness, bitterness, dejection, and hopelessness, but at least her plan to save her island was still safe. She turned around only to see Arlong laughing. Did you see his face when Nami killed him? He fully believed that she was his friend, but he doesn't know her as I do. She was a natural cold-blooded killer that put some of you to shame. The fishman complimented her, which made the girl's stomach swirl in disgust. Years of working under him haven't helped to quell her hatred for him. It only made it grow even further than it already was. The girl flashed a smile toward the fishman, but then Kurubi came. Here, I thought you were going to betray us. It seems that you proved me wrong, and for that, I apologize. The fishman extended his hand, and today, you proved that you're truly a member of the Arlong Pirates. That you're one of us. The girl glared at him, smacking his hand away. Me? One of you people? Don't make me laugh. Both you and I know that I only joined your crew for one reason, and one reason only, and once it is done it will be the last you see me here. So don't go lumping just together. She looked away. I only joined to buy my village, and tomorrow once I hand over the money, it's bye, Nami. No one seemed to notice how Arlong's eyebrows twitched when the girl said that. The blue fishman was right now feeling everything slipping out of his control. He still needed Nami, and her miraculous achievement will set him back for years, but for now, he had a plan. He only needed to find where the money was being hidden. It was as if the heavens heard Arlong's plea, and decided to entertain him for a bit. Kurubi looked at the orange-haired girl crossing his arms. You know, there's something that always bothered me about you. It's why someone, who only lives to hoard money, would you want to buy some tiny little village in the middle of nowhere? Nami looked at him, raising an eyebrow as he pulled out something from his clothes. The girl's eyes went wide as she looked at the item the fishman held. That was till I found this. He smirked. It seems you've been hiding a lot from us, and here I thought you trusted us at least with your money. The paper that Kurubi was holding was an old map of the Komoni Islands that Nami lived in with an X mark on a certain area. While for some that may seem like a treasure mark, for Nami it signified where she was hiding all the treasure she gathered over the years. This will cause her a huge problem if anyone went looking there. All her hard work would be for nothing. Kurubi chuckled, holding the map. It seems that you found a treasure, and decided to keep him for yourself. The fishman pointed to the X on the map. This map is old, but it's a treasure map that directly points to Kokoyashi village. Nami gritted her teeth as Arlong's men around her began to dance in happiness at the prospect of having a treasure, while Arlong himself stared at it as Kurubi asked Nami, "What's wrong? Why are you so flustered right now? Don't tell me you forgot to tell us?" Arlong surprisingly said, "Hey Kurubi, stop jerking around. It's Nami's map, so hand it over to her." Nami quickly snatched the map from the manta ray's hand, yelling at him, "Don't you dare touch it, or even think to go into my room again, because I'm sure it didn't magically land in your hand." She then gave a very cold glare. "Listen here, I'm done with your nagging about me not being loyal. And for the record, I don't care if you trust me or not. I'm only here to fulfill my end of the bargain, and then I'm out." She looked at Arlong. "So I trust you won't pull out, since we came very close to fulfilling our deal." Arlong snickered as he said, "Well, of course, Nami, I'm a man of my word. And I won't back out now, especially since we've come so close to fulfilling it." Nami nodded her head, flipping Kurubi off as she walked away from the park. "Something to be expected from you, Arlong. You're truly a reasonable person." She turned to Kurubi. "Try to be like him more." She then left the park, taking the knife with her as blood was still dripping from it. Kurubi looked at her, muttering, "What an unpleasant woman." However, outside the park in the forest, someone was running as tears were streaming down his face. I can't believe that she played like for suckers over some cheap sob story. Johnny was running as fast as he can after he witnessed how easily Nami killed Usopp, that witch. The man stopped to catch his breath as Herd began to hear screaming. Off the shore of Komoni Islands, Luffy's ship was now being driven by the sea cow that Sanji managed to tame or beat to submission. The beast had 4 huge lumps over its head as it drove the ship closer to the islands. It was only a few minutes when Arlong Park began to appear on the horizon. Luffy quickly began to tap on the sea cow's head, telling it to head there, but suddenly the huge fish began to steer away from the park, as Luffy yelled, "Hey, you're going the wrong way. Take to the building with the huge fish nose." Robin stroked her chin. "It seems that it's afraid of going there with us, so it chose to steer from the original course." She then saw something yelling, "Brace for impact." The boys looked and saw the shore coming close. As the fish drove closer they began to yell. Meanwhile, Luffy made a protective cocoon around Robin to shield her. Momoa slammed into the shore, causing the ship to go flying, and to be heard around the entire island chain as people wondered what was the source of the noise. The beast was dragged into unconsciousness as it drifted back to its cave underwater. With Luffy, he looked and saw the ship flying. "Whoa, this is awesome. We should try this more often. It's cool." This caused yells of distress by Zoro and Sanji, who disagreed with him as they hung onto the railings for dear life. Suddenly the boat began to lose altitude as Zoro looked and screamed at the top of his lungs, "We're going to crash into the forest. Get ready." The boat then slammed inside the forest as it began to weave through trees like a knife through butter. Suddenly, all occupants of the boat heard someone screaming. Zoro looked and his eyes almost popped out from his head. Johnny, and true to the swordsman's statement, Johnny was slammed into the front of the boat as it ran through the forest, till it finally stopped and crashed into a hill. Once the smoke settled, Luffy was somehow sitting on a rock with Robin in his lap. Zoro was headfirst buried inside the hill. Sanji was sprawled down on the top of the hill, while Johnny was buried under the wreckage with only his legs popping out. Luffy began to laugh loudly. "That was so much fun. Man, I wish we can do it another time." He turned to his lover. "What do you think, my flower?" Robin blushed at the nickname, but giggled a little. "Well, for once, I was thrilled. But next, can I also see the view because I didn't get to enjoy it inside the cocoon you put me in?" Luffy rubbed the back of his neck as he laughed awkwardly. Johnny jumped from his place. "What the hell is wrong with you morons? I almost died and you want a repeat of that experience in hell? Are you insane? Or is this normal to you?" The couple looked at him. Normal. The unified response made him crouch in a corner as he cried silently, asking himself why he ended up with a band of sociopaths. Zoro got out from his grave saying, "You get used to it. Believe me when I say that they did crazier things and that when they were just children. I'm scared of the day they decide to actually do crazy stuff." Johnny nodded his head as Sanji groaned from his spot. You would think it was from his pain, but it was from Robin and Luffy sitting together. The poor man's heart just couldn't take it, so he decided to change the subject. "Hey Johnny, where's the other part of your brain? And where's Usopp?" I don't see THNNY bit into his hand as he thought about Usopp, as Luffy said, "Let's go find them. We need to go and help Nami." Johnny then said, "That won't be necessary. Nami doesn't need our help, and Usopp," the man clenched his fist in anger, "I know where he is." Luffy smiled. "Okay, great. Where's he?" Johnny pointed to the open sea as he yelled, "He's in there." That witch Nami killed him. This shocked everyone. Nami killed Usopp. It was impossible. She was their friend. She wouldn't do that. She wouldn't betray them like that. Johnny was launched away from where he was standing by a punch from Luffy, who yelled at him, "Say it again. I dare you to say it again, so I can kick your ass." The boy refused to believe that Nami would do such a thing, given that in the past few days, she acted like she truly belonged to the crew. Robin grabbed her boyfriend. "Luffy, please calm down. I know that you're frustrated, but we can't just jump to conclusions like this." Just like Luffy, Robin didn't believe that Nami actually killed Usopp, so there must be something else here. Luffy bit his tongue as he said, "Well, it's his fault for spewing crap like this." Then yelled at the top of his lungs, "I know there's no way in hell that Nami will harm any of her friends or crewmates. She isn't like that." They all heard the sounds of footsteps approaching them. "Did I hear someone say that we're crewmates?" Nami asked as she held a bloodied knife and bandaged hand while putting her other hand on her hip, glaring at the crew. Luffy blinked. "What are talking about, Nami? We're your friends. We came to help you put with your business just like you asked us to." He took a step forward only for him to be whacked by the girl's staff and get thrown away. She looked at him as she laughed. "Crewmates? Friends? Did you honestly believe any of that? One small sob story and your feelings are all over the place. I've seen toddlers who took me a harder time to trick." She looked at Robin. "Why don't you take this morn and lecture about how pirates stab each other in the back?" He should have known this by now, or was he too comfortable sleeping that he forgot to get a reality check? Robin frowned at the girl's words, but said, "Are you sure that you mean any of your words, because you seem to be not too confident of yourself?" She then added the fatal blow. "And besides, didn't you say you don't kill anyone? And why is your hand bandaged?" Nami felt her confidence waver a little, but she smirked. "If you don't believe me, here's this blade. It has the blood of your friend on it. It was so easy to kill him. He was really an idiot. Trying to fight Arlong." She then threw the knife at Luffy's feet, who grabbed it and gave it to Robin, who eyed it carefully. Sanji then popped from behind them as he waved his hands. "Nami Swan, do you remember me? Your Prince Charming has come to save you from the grasp of the evil fishmen." He then smiled. "Come with me, so we can sail the sea together as lovers." The cook was then pushed aside by the hilt of Zoro's blade, who yelled at him, "Are you even thinking about what's happening here? Your stupid lovesick puppy act is making things much more complicated, so why don't you shut up for 10 seconds? The cook sneered at him. "I don't see you trying to make the situation any better, so how about you let me persuade her to come here through the power of love? You know what they say, love is a hurricane." This caused a sweat drop to appear on Zoro's head as he never heard such a thing, wondering if the cook made it on the spot. Johnny yelled, "See, I told you that she's nothing but an evil witch who cares about no one but herself, and would do anything to get money, even if it meant joining forces with Arlong and killing her own friends." He pointed his sword at her. "She's evil till the core, and she used a lame story to fool us all. I saw her with my own eyes kill Usopp and leave him to die." Nami crossed her hands. "So what? I do what I need to do to survive. It's really nothing personal." She then scratched the back of her head. "Look here, Usopp kinda blubbered before he died that Zoro was his best friend, and now Arlong is interested in both him and Luffy, so as a gesture of gratitude, I will let you take the ship and go away." Zoro shrugged, saying, "I don't care if he took interest in me or not. I only have one question." He glared at her before asking, "Where's Usopp now?" The girl tapped her chin. "I think right now he should be in the clam belt if the winds are right, but you know he could also be in the belly of some fish that was hungry." She shrugged. "Anyway, not my problem anymore at this point." The swordsman frowned as he took out his sword and was about to attack her, only to be stopped by a disembodied hand. He looked at Robin, who shook her head. The man calmed down as he trusted the girl's judgment, but that left him with another problem. From nowhere someone tried to kick him. He looked and saw Sanji glaring at him. "So you also hit women, swordsman? What a horrible treat to have inside a man." Zoro snarled at him for the attack. Someone like Sanji was his worst enemy on earth. He was rude and annoying, acting like a moron 24/7. He looked at him. "What the heck was that for? You tried to attack a lady, and I've sworn to protect them." The two then went into a shouting match, forgetting the situation they were in. Nami gave them an unamused look. "Listen here, you fools. If you feel like fighting, then do it somewhere else. My island already has enough trouble as it is. We don't need more problems knocking on our doors." She crossed her arms. "So do you still trust me now, or did you get the real reason why I was with you all for the money?" She looked Luffy straight in the eye. "If you want your ship, have it, but take your crew of rug rats away from here to go find the One Piece or whatever you want to do with your life." Luffy simply stared as he then fell to the ground, causing Johnny to look at him concerned. "I want to sleep. Wake me up when it's necessary." Confusion ran supreme as none understood why Luffy wanted to sleep all of a sudden. Nami smirked. "Okay, then you can stay, but at your own risk. The last time Arlong took interest in someone, he ripped them into pieces." She turned to walk away as she waved her hand, saying, "See you in the afterlife." Johnny looked at Luffy, wondering why he was still there, but he sat down hoping that Yosaku would come here, so he can go with him away from here, given that Arlong now wanted to see them. Back in Kokoyashi village, Usopp was walking down the streets. He wore an expression of worry and nervousness on his face as he walked forward, remembering what happened at Arlong Park. He silently muttered to himself, "Nami really did the ultimate sacrifice for me. If she was caught, her efforts to buy her village would have been for nothing." He remembered when Nami killed him, so to speak. In reality, the girl pretended to stab while she actually stabbed her own hand. She told the boy that this was the only way for him to live and escape the park, and when she whispered that she will give the crew a secret message to meet at her house. His eyes grew wide as he thought about what would happen if they didn't get the message, and they decided to go to Arlong Park for retribution. The boy began to run quickly to make it to the crew, hoping that he was not too late. Back with the crew, Sanji was leaning against a tree. "Do you think the Nami Swan actually killed Usopp?" He looked at Zoro, waiting for an answer, ignoring the look he got from Johnny, who felt dejected that no one except Zoro believed him. Zoro smiled. "Well, I really don't know, but I think maybe she got angry when I called her a witch, so she decided to end the moron's life." Sanji looked at him with anger, as he jumped ready to kick him, yelling, "Nami isn't a witch, you muscle-headed brood." The swordsman was just as fast as he readied his sword to attack, but something then happened. Both Sanji's kick and the hilt of Zoro's sword hit something, or rather someone. Both Lookerman as Usopp, who had his face get destroyed by both of their attacks, left both men wondering if he was killed for real this time, as Johnny asked, "Is he still alive?" Back in Nami's house, the girl sat waiting patiently. She was looking at the clock every minute or so. She was tapping her fingers against the table in front of her, looking at the map she had, considering where she will hide it now. She yelled in frustration, "Where are they? They should be here by now. My message was clear as day." She then threw a glass cup beside her to the wall, causing it to shatter as Nejiko walked into the house. "Can I understand why are you using all of this aggression against the house? I'm sure that you almost destroyed everything by now." Nami blushed a little as she sat down. "Nothing really, I'm just nervous. You know tomorrow's the big day. We can finally put this chapter of our lives beyond us for good, and I can end this never-ending nightmare." Nejiko smiled. "You're waiting for your friends, aren't you?" Nejiko, her little sister, was easy to read as a book, given that they lived most of their lives together, and she's the one that accompanied her sister through her pain-filled journey. "You're still not sure if you want to join them after you finish your mission?" Nami shook her head. "I want to, but I'm afraid Arlong would retaliate by attacking the village and taking it under his control once again when I'm gone from here." Nejiko smiled. "Well, I'm sure your friends would freak out if they ever heard about this, and would come to attack Arlong to destroy him." Nejiko joked, but Nami smiled knowing that this was something up Luffy's alley. The orange-haired girl then put down her head against the table as she allowed sleep to take her away. Nijiko smiled, putting a small blanket on her. "Well, let's go bring those friends of yours." Back with Luffy, the boy sat in horror as he looked at Usopp. "Usopp, what happened to you? Did Nami do this? I can't believe it." This caused Johnny in the background to fall face down as he began to mutter gibberish. In the back, Sanji smiled awkwardly. "Well, no, not really. This was my doing with the moss-headed idiot over here." He pointed at himself and Zoro. The swordsman then replied, "Don't you mean that this is your doing, half-decent cook?" Robin stood between them. "It's not the time to play the blame game. What matters is that Usopp is fine and doing well." She looked at him. Well as someone can be after he got hit in the face by two forces of nature. Usopp coughed as he sat up. "Well, that was an unpleasant experience. I thought that I really died for a moment there." The boy began to rub his face to soothe his pain, but he felt like he was hit by a huge boulder. He looked to his side only to see Sanji. "Hey there, Usopp. Do you remember me? I'm Sanji from the Bharati. I'm a member of the crew now." Usopp gave him a deadpan look before saying, "Yeah, I had a better introduction with your foot though." The man rubbed his head as he backed away. "My head hurts," Usopp said as he massaged his head. Luffy asked him, "Usopp, why are you alive? Johnny told us that Nami killed you, but I didn't believe it. How did you escape from Arlong?" Robin sat near the boy as she was still examining the knife Nami gave them after wiping it from blood. The boy sighed. "Nami really saved my hide. She stabbed her hand with the knife, faking her blood as my own, so I can escape through the ocean." He looked down at the ground. "She really risked everything for me. I thought that she might die if one of the fishmen decided to take a closer look at my corpse." Luffy began to cheer. "I knew it. Nami will never betray. She's still our friend." The boy began to cheer, but Johnny began to slip away as a huge wave of guilt hit him. The long-nosed boy then turned his head toward Robin. "Nami said that she left a message for us to find, but I don't know how." Robin merely stared at the knife as she knew that Nami brought it with her for a reason, but couldn't find anything on it. Robin frowned. "I know the clue is here, but I just can't find it." She hated when she couldn't find what she needed to find. She was a descendant of a whole lineage of archaeologists, and yet she can't find a single clue. She felt a little disappointed in herself right now. "Don't beat yourself too much about it." They all heard a voice come from behind them. They looked only to see Nijiko. Nijiko came, and took the knife, looking at it from all sides till her eye caught something. On the bottom of the handle of the knife was a very small word carved. It spelled, "home." The older girl's sweat dropped as she thought no one would remotely be able to find the clue, but she then began to laugh loudly before calming down. "Ah man, sometimes my sister is impossible," Nijiko said, before ushering the group to follow her. Luffy asked her, "Where are we going?" The girl tilted her head. "We're going to see Nami. She said that she needed to talk to all of you in the face, so I came here to bring you to her." Back with Johnny, the man was running as he felt like a complete tool. "Big sis Nami, I should have never doubted you." He felt like a horrible human being. He jumped to conclusions and threw accusations at a person who was trying to help them. He ran hoping to find a way to redeem himself. He then bumped into someone. He looked up only to see Yosaku. The green-haired man then said, "Man, where were you? I was afraid that some of the fishmen managed to catch you." Johnny then said, "Forget about that. I did something really horrible." The man began to tell him what happened from the apparent death of Usopp to Nami, telling them to leave to Usopp's arrival to how Nami saved Usopp's life by stabbing her hand. "I feel like a complete monster." Yosaku sighed. "Well, you did do something stupid, but I can't blame you given the circumstances." To Yusaku, Johnny wasn't to be blamed. The situation was already as tense as it can get with the fishmen after Usopp, so no one would have thought twice about this. Johnny then stood up yelling, "But I'm going to make it right. I'm going to defeat Arlong for big sis Nami." The man yelled, making his friend think that he was officially insane. Yosaku looked at him and saw that there was determination in his eyes, causing him to smile a little. The green-haired man grabbed his hand saying, "All right, let's do this thing. I'll help you." The two then went straight to Arlong Park to put an end to his rule, not knowing of the extreme beating that was waiting for them. Back in Kokoyashi village's docks, a marine ship landed in it as Nezumi, who took bribes for Arlong, came and walked on the docks as he said, "All right people, we have one job to do here, so let's do it right." This caused a lot of people to look at him with worried expressions. The marine captain walked up to Genzo and said, "Hey you." Genzo looked at him. "Can you help me go to a house of a fugitive that I need to search? I heard some rumors and I want to make sure if they're true or not." Genzo swallowed heavily as he asked as calmly as possible, "And do tell, what is the name of this fugitive?" The man laughed like a mouse. "I think her name is Nami." "Yeah, that's right. Her name is Nami. She is suspected of being a thief, so we have to search her property to make sure that nothing wrong is going around here." Genzo looked at him with anger. "You bastard, Arlong has been torturing us for years, and you didn't bat an eyelash. No, you worked with him, and now you care about justice." The marine captain didn't care as he said, "Never mind, I'll find it myself." He walked away with his men following as he said, "It's hard to find good help these days." Back in Nami's house, the crew arrived at her house. Usopp first went in. "Hey Nami, thank you for..." The boy was shut off by Nami pounding her fist into his head as she yelled, "What were you thinking? If I didn't find a way to fake your death, you would have ended up dead." The boy looked down as he said, "I'm sorry, I just didn't want to see that old man did to help him." The boy looked away as he realized how close he came to destroying Nami's hard work. The girl looked at him before sighing, "Alright, you're forgiven, but you must know that you now own me about..." She thought about it for a moment. 10 million bellas. The girl smirked under her breath as the boy paled and fell backward as he began to stutter. Nami looked at him, "And thank you for helping him." The girl looked at Robin, "And here I thought that you would have found my clue immediately." She shook her head dismissively, "I guess I overestimated your own abilities." The black-haired girl slumped into depression in the corner of the room as she began to draw circles on the ground saying, "Everyone makes mistakes once in a while, I'm not fault-proof." This caused Nami to sweat drop. She went to the crouched girl as she patted her back. "Don't worry Robin, I swear I was just kidding a little bit. I didn't mean it, really." Nijiko just stayed at the side of the room as she looked at her sister's friends and she had to admit that they were a bunch of colorful characters. They seemed fun to be around. Luffy then asked, "So why did you want to invite us here, Nami?" The girl smiled at him, "I just wanted to thank you all for making my dream come true. For my entire life, I dedicated it to salvaging enough money to buy my home village back, but you all came along and gave me what I need." She then bowed down saying, "And for that I thank you." A blush appeared on Luffy's face as he waved his hand saying, "Come on, you're embarrassing me now. I didn't do anything really. I just wanted to help my friend out." He paused for a moment before he asked her in an excited tone, "So does that mean you're coming with us tomorrow after you pay them the money?" The girl flattered for a moment, not knowing how to tell him that she wasn't sure if she wanted to go, but a knock on the door of their house broke her attention. She panicked as she thought that this was one of Arlong's men, so she said, "Guys, I need to go out of the back door. If these are Arlong's men, we're going to have trouble." The crew nodded as they sneakily left the house. The orange-haired navigator went to the door and opened it only to be greeted by the marine rat as she called him, who asked her, "Is this Nami's house?" Nami sneered at him. She hated him so much. He was a plight on the island. He was one of Arlong's lackeys or partners, so to speak. He took bribe money from the fishman in order to turn a blind eye to all of his crimes. She was sure that if he reported Arlong, the fishman would have been sent packing years ago. The girl took a deep breath. "Yeah, that's my house. What is it for you?" The man laughed a little as he said, walking forward, "Please step away from the door." He pushed her aside and continued speaking, "You're being suspected of theft, and we came here to confirm if those rumors are true or not." Before he can even walk a step further, Nami stopped him dead in his tracks as she said, "You can't search my house. I'm a member of the Arlong Pirates, and he'll have your head if he hears about this." The girl knew that the marine will cower in fear once the fishman's name was mentioned, but he didn't. The man began to laugh his trademark laugh and looked at his men who stood waiting for his orders. He looked at Nami, "I never heard of this, and Arlong never mentioned you, so I assume that you're only bluffing to save your hide." He looked at his men and ordered them, "Search the house and don't leave a place unturned till we find the stolen goods." The men saluted him as they entered the house, and began searching through it, destroying everything in their path. Nezumi looked at the girl smiling, "You should be lucky that we found out that most of your stolen goods are from pirates, or else you would be facing some serious trouble, young lady." Nami was in shock. How could have this happened? She was only one day away from her goal. She had it right in front of her eyes, only for it to be taken brutally and evilly right in front of her eyes. What kind of evil deity was governing the skies up there was the only thought she had at the moment. She looked at the corrupt marine and yelled in anger, "How can you be so evil? Arlong has been terrorizing the island for years. He killed countless people. He ruined many people's lives, and yet you turn a blind eye, and now you're here because of some stolen loot." The marine laughed, "I have no idea what are you talking about. Arlong is an honest businessman. I have seen no such signs from him. You shouldn't go throwing accusations left and right like that, young girl." The marine's men then came as one came up front and said, "Sir, we searched the house. We found no sign of the stolen goods." The men then stood waiting for orders. Nami mentally breathed a sigh of relief as she was the only one that knew where the money was hidden, but her relief was short-lived. Nezumi began to stroke his chin as he eyed the garden. "Go and search in that garden. I'm sure that they might be there. I mean, where else would 10 million bellas worth of stolen good be buried?" The men then brought out shovels and went into the garden, as Nami stood there shocked for one reason. She looked at Nezumi as she asked herself why he knew that there are 10 million gold hidden in the garden. She was the only person that knew the amount. In addition to her was Arlong. Luffy's voice then made its way into her mind. She remembered when he asked her what will she do if Arlong betrayed her, and found a way to take the money away to force her to start from scratch. The girl shook her head. Arlong was a businessman. He loved money. He wouldn't betray her, would he? She was cut out of her musings when she heard her sister say, "Hey, stop that. You're ruining the orchid. You're ruining everything." Suddenly the men who were digging stopped as they hit something. They all moved away from the area as they saw a huge treasure chest. The chest itself was full to the brim with money, golden items, and gems of all kinds. Nezumi then came to his men. "Well? Sir, it's 10 million as you said." The man said, "We'll get it to the ship immediately." The girl looked at Nezumi and asked one thing, "How?" Nezumi played innocent as he asked, "Excuse me." The girl growled, "How did you know that there were 10 million bellas in there? I'm the only person who knows the amount. Tell me, how did you find out?" The man smiled as he said, "Lucky guess." He then snickered. Nezumi's men then began to lift the chest to take it to the ship. Nami felt herself reach a breaking point as she brought out a knife she had and pointed it toward Nezumi, yelling, "You won't be taking this money anywhere." One of the Marines lifted his rifle, "Put the knife down, or you'll be dealt with accordingly." The girl didn't hear him as she rushed toward Nezumi and the Marine began to squeeze the trigger of his rifle. Suddenly, Nami felt something fall on her as the sound of a bullet echoed. She looked at her sister who was now on her and bleeding. "Nejiko, are you alright?" The blue-haired girl moaned in pain as she said, "Yeah, but it really hurts." She looked around and saw that the Marines have already left. The sound of the bullet attracted the villagers who came to their house with Genzo leading the charge. "What happened here?" he asked in terror as he saw that Nejiko was bleeding. Nami then stood up and told Genzo, "Please take care of her." The girl then ran toward Arlong Park as Nejiko was taken to the doctor. She had one thought on her mind and it was Arlong. Back with Luffy, he heard what happened with Nami and sighed. He looked at the villagers taking her sister to the doctor to heal her, and said, "I really hoped that something like this wouldn't happen." Robin then came and sat beside him. "It can't be helped now. We all knew that this was going to happen eventually, so what do we do now?" "Nothing," Luffy replied. "Nothing?" Robin asked astounded. "Right, nothing." Robin frowned at the logic till Zoro spoke. "He's right. Right, confront him, and he will manipulate her into restarting the deal once again. I hate this, but we need her to ask us for help, or she won't look us in the eye if we interfere." Robin nodded at the logic, but she felt that it was a little wrong to see their friends suffer and sit aside. In Arlong Park, the fishman was sitting laughing as Nezumi told him that the mission he sent him on was a success. He was joined by other fishmen, but suddenly the door was launched off its hinges as Nami walked in holding a knife. She looked at him with unbridled rage as she yelled, "Arlong, how dare you? How dare betray our deal? I thought you said that you're a man of your word. How dare you back out of our deal?" She held a knife and directed it toward him as he laughed. He then stood up and said, "What are you talking about, Nami my dear? When did I betray our deal? I have no idea, what are you talking about?" The girl lunged at him as he dodged her. "Don't play dumb with me. The only person who knew about the amount that I owed you besides me was you. You're the one who told the Marines where they were." The girl tried to lunge again, but Arlong grabbed her head. "Really now, the Marines came and took your money? Pity? Oh well. I guess that you have to start all over again." He then tightened his grip on her head asking, "And I ask you again, when did I betray you, Nami? Are you sure that I'm the one who told the Marines? What is your proof?" The girl's eyes began to fill with tears. "See, you aren't sure. So that means that I never betrayed you and that you're throwing accusations at me. I'm truly sad that the Marines took your money, but that means I never received it, so the deal is still on, which means you are still obliged to draw maps for me. So how about instead of throwing accusations, you start drawing maps, or go gathering money once again?" He then threw the girl aside, who ran out of there crying as she felt her life slowly escape her body given the huge betrayal she just experienced. Back in the village, the people were all gathered with Genzo in the front as he looked at them. Each one of them had a weapon as they had one goal in mind: fight Arlong. Genzo then yelled, "People, today we have one goal in mind." He saw people's determination for years. "We told under Arlong's rule. He used us in the most horrible of ways and forced us to buy our own lives, but no crime of his was as huge as what he did for Nami. He forced a small girl to go and risk her life to gather enough money to honor a deal he made with her. He then clenched his fist, only for him to go back on his deal and betray her. So, going this moment forward, we won't stand for this and for what he did." The people began to yell as they lifted their weapons, but stopped when they heard, "Hey, guys, what are you doing?" They all looked at Nami, who was standing with a knife in her hand. She looked at them and said, "Please go back. I know this looks bad, but I can always start again. I know it's hard, but this time I have friends around, so I can do it much faster, so please go back." Genzo walked up to her. "Nami, we're sorry that we left you alone to carry this weight all these years, and we didn't help you in any way, but this ends today." The girl looked in shock because this meant he knew why she joined Arlong. The girl stuttered, "UK no." The man nodded his head along with the entire village. "We never did anything because we never wanted to disturb your efforts, but now since he dared and betrayed you, there's no more reason for us to stand idle and not do anything." He didn't flinch when the girl lifted her knife and waved it in front of them. "I won't allow you to go. Even if I had to stab you all, I will stop you." Her eyes began to tear up, because if you go, you all die. Genzo approached her as he took the knife away and threw it. "We know, the man looked at the other villagers and said, "Today, we either earn our freedom or die trying." The villagers then went away and left Nami to collapse to the ground as she practically saw her entire village walk off to their deaths. She looked at her shoulder and saw the Arlong mark. She grabbed the knife as she yelled, "Arlong," and stabbed the mark over and over again. She was stopped as someone held her hand. She looked behind her to see Luffy looking down on the ground with his hat shadowing his face. She yelled at him, "What are you doing here? Are you here to mock me after you warned me about his betrayal?" The boy remained silent as Nami continued to vent her anger on him. "Leave this place. You don't understand in the slightest what is happening around here, so leave." The girl began to throw sand at him, telling him repeatedly to leave before he said quietly, "You're right. I don't understand what's going around here." Seeing that she reached her breaking point, the girl looked at him and pleaded, "Luffy, please help me." The boy replied by putting his hat on her head and yelling to the sky, "Of course, I will." He walked toward his crew who were waiting for him in the village and said, "Let's go." Everyone replied, "Yes, Captain." And with that, they began their march toward Arlong Park. Back in the park, the villagers were denied access to it by both Johnny and Yosaku, who after they had their butts handed to them decided to wait for the crew to come and finish the job. So when they saw the villagers, they decided to stop them from committing suicide. One of the villagers then yelled at the pair, "What are you doing? Step aside so we can take out the fishmen inside." "Yeah, we came here to fight for our freedom. Yeah, move aside." Johnny looked at them, "Wait a little bit, and help will come. It's only a matter of minutes." The villagers looked in confusion. What help was he talking about? Was he meaning the Marines? The Marines that were in charge of their island were corrupt, and the one that came earlier was killed. Yosaku added, "If they can't defeat him, no one can." He looked over them and said, "Here, they come." All the villagers turned and saw 5 individuals walking up to them. One was a boy wearing a straw hat, a girl with black hair, a green-haired man with one white sword tied to his waist, a blonde-haired man, and the final one was a long-nosed boy. No one knew who they were except Nijiko, who wondered if they were actually planning to take out Arlong. Luffy walked to the gate and kicked the door open, entering the park only to see shocked expressions. He looked around and said, "Who's Arlong?" The fishman who was sitting on the chair boosted, "That would be me, and to what?" He was cut off as Luffy passed everyone, punching him in the face and sending him into a wall in the back of the park. Luffy then said, "That's for making Nami cry." He then cracked his knuckles as the other members of his crew joined him. "I'm here to put an end to your rule. 3 vs 3. All the fishmen looked with shock evident in their eyes as they saw a random kid come out of nowhere and punch their captain. They all looked at him with anger as 2 walked up to the boy trying to punch him in the face. Luffy merely dodged them, grabbing their heads and smashing them together as he said, "You have to be faster than that." Another one jumped behind him raising a sword. "You were saying something, you small punk." He tried to strike the boy, but he suddenly felt all of his joints restricted. He looked to notice that he was held by disembodied hands. "What the heck is this? What is happening to me? Where did this come from?" He then heard someone say, "That would be my work." He looked only to see a dark-haired girl with her arms crossed. "Twist." Once the word left the girl's mouth, the fishman felt his entire body break as he was twisted around. Finally, he fell to the ground groaning in pain. One of the fishmen looked at her and yelled, "You damn monster. You'll pay for hurting our brother." He went for the punch only to be sent flying courtesy of Luffy, who kicked him right in the face. The boy cracked his fists, looking at everyone waiting for them to attack. A couple of fishmen then charged toward the boy. They were swiftly taken care of by both Sanji and Zoro, both who kicked them and sliced them away. Zoro looked at Luffy. "You can't stop yourself from causing trouble, can you?" Sanji rolled his eyes. "If you're afraid of fighting, just say Moss Head. I'm more than enough to take of these morons. I fried bigger fish inside my kitchen." Sanji then looked at Luffy, "And you? Besides Moss Head's lack of bravery, why did you charge head in first? Are you stupid or something? Next time wait for just. We're a team after all." The boy smiled as he waved at him, saying with a straight face, "Don't worry too much. I was just doing fine. I was about to kick his ass before you guys came along." Sanji shook his head as he said, "Whoever said that we're worried about you." He then added, "What I meant is that you shouldn't hog all the glory for yourself." Robin shook her head softly at the crew's antics as she saw Usopp muttering about how he didn't mind Luffy taking all the glory, with Zoro lifting his eyebrow at him. One of the fishmen noticed Usopp. "Hey guys, look," he said, pointing at the long-nosed boy who froze in place. "Isn't that the human that we saw Nami kill? How is he still alive?" Kurubi then looked at the green-haired man, saying, "Is that Rorona Zoro?" Every fishman then shivered at the mention of the swordsman. He then eyed Usopp. "So Nami didn't kill you, huh?" He scoffed, looking away. "I always knew that she wasn't to be trusted, but no one would believe me." Arlong then lifted himself from the rubble. "So I take you came here for Nami, and you know that she's a pirate, so that must mean one of 2 things, either you're delusional or you're a pirate yourself." Luffy nodded at the last statement, making Arlong laugh. "Tell me, what can a human like you do against a superior fishman?" He looked at Hachi, nodding his head, to which the octopus fishman understood the message. He then stood at the edge of Arlong Park. He yelled, "You foolish humans, as if I will allow you to fight Arlong. You'll be dead now before you even know it." He then began to play a sound from his mouth as he said, "Come out now, beast." Suddenly, the water began to shift violently with the surface rippling. A huge sea creature then emerged from the water as it looked at the park. But the thing about the creature was that it looked beaten up, sporting a couple of bumps on its head. It looked down at the people in the park, causing immense fear inside Usopp's heart. But three stood there not caring about the entire situation. Luffy looked at it. "Oh, so it's you again." Sanji quirked an eyebrow looking at the beast before it dawned on him. "Right, I remember him from this morning." Zoro only revealed his sword, wanting to test it against the huge sea creature. Momoa then saw the two individuals who brutalized him so much in this one day. He then turned around with tears in his eyes as he tried to flee the area to be as far away from them as possible. He stopped in his tracks as he heard Arlong call out to him, "Momoa, what do you think you're going?" The beast turned fearfully, looking at him as the fishman added, "You can go if you really want, but know that I can find if I want to." Hearing this, the huge creature swallowed and attacked the crew. Luffy looked at it and his surroundings, saying, "Guys, duck." Wisely, Robin, Zoro, and Usopp did as told. Only Sanji kept standing, and he soon came to regret his decision. Luffy then stumped his feet into the concrete of the park. He sent his arms to Momu's horns, grabbing them as he began to spin around with his rubber body, causing Sanji to say, "This doesn't seem good." Luffy then let himself free, and he began to spin in the opposite direction to when he was rotating as he yelled, "Gum Gum Pinwheel." This alone caused many fishmen to be taken out, with Sanji getting hit in the process. In the end, the boy sent the beast flying into the distance as it splashed into the ocean, moaning in pain. Luffy laughed as he looked around him, saying, "That was fun. I wish I can do it again." Sanji jumped up yelling with shark-like teeth, "What the hell is wrong with you? You almost took me out with you and the others." Luffy only laughed at him, apologizing to him, with Robin standing beside him laughing along with Usopp, basking about what just happened. Zoro stood up and said, "Don't celebrate just yet. There's still a couple of them standing." He pointed his sheathed sword toward Hachi, Chu, Kurubi, and some random cannon fodder that took Luffy's warning. "Let's end them first." Outside the park, people were astounded that they were strong enough to defeat the fishmen. Murmurs began to raise as people wondered if this was going to be the end of the menace that terrorized them for so long. Genzo stood there. "I think this might be our only chance to see the end of Arlong Park." He looked at Johnny and Yosaku, who were preventing anyone from entering, and yelled, "Everyone stop. Let's see what happens." The people who were trying to go inside the park stopped at Genzo's orders. Back inside the park, Hachi looked at Arlong. "Rest, brother, we'll take care of this. We don't want you to tire yourself fighting them." He was then reprimanded by Kurobi, who said, "You mean that you don't want him to embarrass himself? Brother Arlong is too strong to be tired by a bunch of low humans." Chu nodded his head as Hachi apologized. The big-lipped fishman added, "Right, so let's go finish these fools and go find Nami to see why the long nose over there is still alive and kicking. Plus, if we let Arlong loose, nothing will remain of this park." Hachi stood in front of the trio of Sanji, Luffy, and Zoro. He took a deep breath as Zoro pointed out that he was about to pull something while Sanji talked about the proper way to cook an octopus. Luffy looked at his feet. "Guys, I think we have a problem here." Robin noticed this and was about to talk, but then Hachi yelled, "Taco Hachi Black." He then released some kind of a black liquid, causing Zoro and Sanji to jump away while Luffy was hit, Octopus Ink. Both men looked at the now black-colored Luffy, who was yelling in pain, and yelled, "Why didn't you move?" Robin answered them, "His legs are stuck in the ground." Usopp, Zoro, and Sanji facepalmed immediately. They then saw Hachi lifting a huge piece of rubble and was about to hit Luffy. The octopus fishman slammed the rubble down only for it to break into many pieces as Sanji stood there with a smirk on his face. "What a fool of a captain I chose to follow, but still better than you freaks who dare to harm a lady." Kurubi looked at him. "I have to admit that you're impressive for a human, but you're a pirate that's talking about chivalry. Now that's a new one." Sanji didn't talk too kindly to this as he said, "How about I show you what chivalry can do to you, because I'm still not done or of hurting Nami." Meanwhile, Usopp was trying to take Luffy away from the fight, but he only managed to stretch his legs. He was almost stopped by a random goon only for his back to break when Robin dealt with him. She looked at his feet and said, "This is a problem. Luffy, can't you punch your way out of them?" The boy shook his head, but Usopp screamed as he saw Hachi lifting a piece of stone to crush them. The fishman was then intercepted by Zoro, who said, "Kinda rude to stop him. Why don't you test your skills against me?" The swordsman then unsheathed his wado, looking at Hachi, who threw the rubble he had at Zoro, but the swordsman dodged. Usopp wiped the sweat from his forehead, saying, "Good job, Zoro." He then noticed that he let go of Luffy, who slammed into Chu. The fishman looked in anger at Usopp, who ran away in fright with Chu giving chase. "Come back here and die, you coward." The long-lipped fishman stood outside the park, seeing the two clowns that got their asses handed to them earlier with armed Kokoyashi villagers. He smirked, but suddenly got hit by a flaming projectile in the face. Usopp laughed as he said, "Don't you forget that you're facing Captain Usopp." The boy then ran away with Chu giving chase, telling him that he was going to end him. In the park, Luffy tried to free himself but to avail. He saw Arlong stand up and talk with Kurubi and Hachi. He then yelled, "I'm going to kick your ass." Luffy sent a fist toward the fishman, who grabbed it saying, "Do you seriously believe that you're going to beat me?" The fishman calmly walked up to the boy and said, "I want to test something." He then put his hands into the ground and dug a huge chunk of concrete where Luffy's legs were still stuck. "I want to see if it's true that devil fruit users sink in the sea." The boy panicked as he sent a fist to Arlong, but the saw shark man bit it, causing Luffy to bite him back. Zoro and Sanji panicked when Arlong threw the boy into the water. Cinco Fleur. Net. 100 disembodied hands began to form above the seawater, preventing Luffy from falling in it. Robin looked at him, sweating from her brow. "Luffy, find a way to break yourself free. I don't know how much longer I can hold it." The boy looked around, but couldn't find anything. Suddenly an idea hit him. He then sent his hands toward Arlong's shoulders, causing the fishman to blink in surprise. He then began to rotate his hands around them. The fishman then knew what he was going to do, but was too late to stop him. Luffy then yelled, "Gum Gum." The boy, using all his strength, sent himself flying toward the fishman with the concrete part aimed at him. Concrete smasher. The concrete smashed at Arlong's tough skin. The concrete smashed into pieces, freeing Luffy, but the sudden freedom caused an increase in his speed, sending him flying into the sky. The boy, thinking quickly, wrapped his hand around Arlong and took him with him. Both Hachi and Kurubi both gaped with hanging jaws at what happened. A cough from Sanji brought them back. "Since that's over, how about I go back to cooking your butts?" He then launched a kick against Kurubi, who blocked it with his fin, saying, "You may be strong, but you're still no match to a master in fishman karate." The two of them then began to exchange blows. With Zoro, he looked at Hachi before lifting his sword and dashing toward him. Robin was left standing alone with the fodder cannon. They looked at her and started smiling. She tilted her head before uttering words that they didn't hear. Suddenly disembodied hands appeared all over their bodies and began to twist them around. They all fell to the ground moaning in pain as she said, "All of them got the good fight while I was stuck with cannon fodder." She walked toward the villagers as she wondered if Usopp needed her help. She then ran to aid him, and quite possibly have a good fight. With Usopp, the boy was running for his life as the fishman. The long-lipped fishman was shooting water blasts at him, and he was terrified for his own life. He knew that if he didn't find a way to gain a break or distract him, he'll be dead. The boy opened his pack, and saw something that might just save him. He looked at Chu, who shoot another blast at him, before falling to the ground and letting custom-made fake blood splatter on the ground, giving the illusion that he was actually dead. The fishman stood over the apparently dead body and frowned. "Wow, now that was a waste of my precious time. I thought that I would at least have some fun, but turns out that he just dies from one hit. Now that's disappointing." He began to rub his head. "Though I have it give it to him. He sure can run, but that didn't save him in the end." The fishman began to walk toward Arlong Park as he said, "Well, I suppose that the others must have taken care of the other trash, so there's no need for me to interfere." He stroked his chin. "Perhaps I'll deal with this silly rebellion of Kokoyashi villagers. Make them an example to others." The fishman began to grow smaller in the distance as Usopp raised from his apparent death and smirked to himself, saying, "Well, that worked just fine." He smiled at his brilliance to use a ketchup star to pretend that he was dead, and Rick the fishman. The boy shivered, remembering him. He knew that he was no match for the strong fishman. He looked around him, saying, "I should use some dirt to cover myself with it to pretend that I was in a real battle." He took some dirt and began to smear it on himself, but then he began to try to get up with an excuse to his friends. "What will I say? Sorry, guys, but this guy was too strong for me, and I almost died fighting him." He shook his head. "No, how about, hey guys, sorry, but I really fought this guy, but he managed to slip away from me. Yeah, that sounds right." He sat there as memories began to bombard him from the moment he joined the crew, to all the convictions they had, from Luffy to Zoro to Nami to Sanji to Nejiko. He felt like an absolute failure trying to run away from a fight. What will his dad think of him, if he saw him now? He shook his head as he stood up and looked at the fishman's retreating form. He knew that what he was about to do would be labeled as absolute craziness, but he didn't want to be a failure and a coward. He yelled at the top of his voice, "Hey freak show, the fight's not over yet. Where do you think you're going?" Suddenly, Usopp not only remembered that he lost the element of surprise that he could have capitalized on to beat Chu, but also remembered that he didn't have any type of plan to fight him. But he stood in front of him bravely, saying, "I'm still alive and kicking. What are you going to do about it?" Usopp knew that antagonizing the fishman was a bad idea, but now he was beyond safe, so he might as well go all out. Chu turned around with an annoyed expression on his face. "What? Are you still alive? What the heck are you? Some kind of cat with 9 lives?" The fishman then gave him his full attention. The boy shivered, but he knew from the moment he left his island, he left a safe environment to enter a more dangerous one, because they were going to put their life on the line by taking many risks. Usopp smirked, as if a puny shoot like that would be able to kill me. Now come at me with everything that you got? Was annoying a bad idea? Yes, it was. Did he care? No, he didn't. He knew that his crew was now facing their own set of monsters, and they will laugh about it later. He knew that if he ran away, he wouldn't have the right to call himself a pirate or even laugh with them. The boy grabbed his slingshot and put a shot in it as he yelled, "Certain kill." Suddenly Chu managed to cover the distance between them, Flame Star. Chu dodged the attack as he punched Usopp in the face, sending him to the ground. The boy slammed hard on the ground as he felt his nose break into pieces. Chu looked at him. Well, I have to say you're either pretty brave or pretty stupid. You could have kept playing dead and survived, but you didn't. Usopp wheezed out saying, "D-freak, you won't hurt Nami anymore." Chu came to him saying, "Well, you got one thing right. It's going to be over for you in a couple of moments." He stood in front of him, and was about to stomp him when arms sprouted on his back and clutched him as he heard a voice say, "Deus Fleur." Clutch. Chu then felt a horrible pain shoot through his back only for it to be followed by a pain in his knee as Usopp yelled, "Usopp hammer." The boy stood up and retreated toward Robin. The boy then said, "Good thing, you came here, Robin. I don't think that I could have managed to keep him down for long." Robin smiled at him. "Usopp, I'm sure that you could have managed to do something anyway, so have you managed to land some hits on him?" The boy blinked. "Not much, but I think I have a plan to beat, but I'm gonna need your help for it to pass." The girl nodded as Usopp ushered for her to follow his lead. Chu looked at them talking. "Dude, you forget about me, you morons? I swear I'm going to get you both." He then saw Usopp fling something at him. He remembered what happened back at the park with the flaming bullet. He raised his hand to protect his face but suddenly felt something on his back moving and catching the flying object. He opened his eyes and saw that the object was nothing but a bottle of rum that was held by a hand. The hand then smashed the bottle on his head, covering him in rum and causing several injuries to him as blood flew down. He then noticed that the pair was absent. Damn it, they managed to flee away. He looked at the forest behind him and said, "They must be hiding in their woods." He looked at the water pond behind him saying, "No matter, I'll just have to flush them out of the woods." He walked to the water and put his mouth on it and began to suck it up till his torso bloated. He looked at the forest. "Get ready to be turned into cheese when I'm done with you." In the forest, Usopp looked at Robin, who was holding 2 hammers he gave her, and said, "We'll only have one shot at this. It doesn't matter if I do it cowardly or not. The important thing is that I finish the job and end him." Robin nodded at him. Chu yelled, "Water cannon." He released a huge wave of water bullets that destroyed the clearing near Usopp, causing the boy to look in shock from behind the tree he was hiding. Chu's sweat dropped, wondering what he did to deserve this. He looked at Usopp and riddled the tree he was hiding behind with water bullets. Usopp merely hugged his head as he saw Robin move to her position. "I will prove to everyone that I know that I'm a brave warrior of the sea. You just watch me finish this fight because there's no more playing around." He then played his slingshot back. "Today I'm a pirate. This fight is over." Chu then kicked the tree he was hiding behind and looked at him. "What is over?" Usopp smirked as he jumped away. "Do you know that rum is flammable?" Chu's eyes widened as he was dosed with rum. Usopp then threw a capsule, "Certain kill flaming star." Chu was quickly covered in flames as he tried to run away to the nearest water source to turn off the flames that were covering him. He ran toward the pound and threw himself in it, turning off the flames. He let out a sigh of relief and looked up only to see 4 disembodied hands holding hammers, and Robin holding 2 in her hands. "Game over," was the last thing he heard before the beating began. Once Robin finished beating him up, she walked toward Usopp, who asked, "Was that really necessary?" He looked back at Chu, who looked like a bunch of wallops. The girl nodded her head saying, "Yes, I did." He walked with her back to the park as they left an unconscious Chu behind, being both the victor of their fight. With Sanji, the man looked at his captain and Arlong fly into the sky only to both come down in an area near the park with a huge thud. From the side of his eye, he saw Kurubi attacking him with a side chop, but Sanji blocked the attack. "I heard that martial artists fight with honor and don't use blind attacks. Tell me, where's the honor in what you did right now?" Kurubi smirked at the statement. "To fight someone with honor, you must be of an equal footing, but the thing is that you're nothing but a lowly human, so stay alert because if you lose focus you might end up dying." Sanji frowned at the statement. "Dying? The only thing that's dying here is you, and I'll make sure that you become a lovely dish to serve. You'll be a superior dish if that's what you're worried about." Sanji then aimed a kick toward the fishman, who blocked it with his left fin. As he was fighting Kurubi, he noticed that Zoro fell on the ground with blood coming out of his wound. "Zoro!" Sanji called out to him, knowing that the swordsman must have aggravated his wounds from his fight with Mihawk. However, this distraction caused him very much as he felt a huge pressure hit his chest, sending him flying backward on the ground with a thud. Kurubi stood in front of him saying, "What did I just tell you about letting your guard down, you damned human? I'm a 40-level master of fishman karate, so I can't be taken easily after all." Sanji was down on the ground as he coughed a little, with Johnny and Yosaku calling out to him, "Cook brother." Kurubi scoffed, "What a bunch of weaklings. They couldn't even keep up with a couple of minutes." He looked at Hachi, who was brandishing his 6 swords, and said, "Come on, let's go help Arlong and Chu get rid of their humans, and then we can throw them in the ocean." Kurubi then saw Zoro raise challenging Hachi to a sword fight. Before he heard if those were level 40 hits, he turned around to see Sanji fixing his tie while having a cigarette in his mouth. The geezer's kicks must be a level 400. Sanji then ran and kicked Kurubi in the fin, causing him to slide back a little, saying, "So are you ready to be served with some delicious vegetables? To be honest, I never cooked manta ray before, but I'm sure that you'll be a good test subject." The fishman attacked him and punched the air beside Sanji, who dodged the blow. The cook was shocked when he saw ripples appearing in the air as Kurubi smirked. "You see, this is the difference between us. We're both playing on different levels." The fishman was cut off from his speech as Sanji kicked him hard in his face, causing him to gasp from pain. The cook looked at him unimpressed and said, "If you have time to gloat, then you have time to fight." The manta ray stood up, taking a fighting position. "You'll regret this." Sanji cracked his neck as he sailed toward him, saying, "Sure, but be warned that this will end badly for you. I fought harder opponents at a restaurant in the East Blue." Sanji then sent a kick, but Kurubi blocked it with his fin. The fishman then sent another punch that caused Sanji to fly back, but he came up again, making Kurubi surprised that he survived 2 hits. The fishman then said, "I must admit that this is the first time that a human survived my punches." Sanji laughed a little as he said, "Believe there's more of me and even stronger in that restaurant I told you about." Kurubi frowned. "I think that I'm being underestimated here." Kurubi looked at Sanji and tried to think of a way to fight him, given that they seemed to be equally matched, much to the fishman's ire. He looked behind him and saw the ocean, causing him to smirk. "It seems that we're both equally matched here, but what will happen when we're inside my playground?" The fishman then charged at Sanji, grabbing and throwing himself and Sanji inside the water. Inside the water, Sanji managed to free himself from the fishman's grasp, but suddenly he felt something hit his back as Kurubi said, "Fishman karate. Armblade slash." Sanji gasped as he let the air out of his lungs, and Kurubi began to taunt him, "Look at you, and how you were reduced into nothing but a squirming midget when I took inside the water. Killing you will be easier here." Sanji frowned at him and launched himself, trying to kick him, but Kurubi managed to avoid him and kicked HME. "How does it feel when the shoe is on the other foot?" Sanji looked at him, struggling to breathe. Sanji then tried to send another kick, but Kurubi grabbed his leg, shoving him away. "I have to admit, even for a lowly human, you impressed me. You're still fighting even though you're inside water, so if you truly want to fight." His hair then sprung to life. "So be it." Manta ray thread gripple. Kurubi's hair then wrapped itself around Sanji, who freed himself using a kick, but given that his speed was decreased inside the water, Kurubi managed to avoid him. The fishman smirked. "It's kinda sad that your kicks were weakened due to being in the water, however, my hits don't. In fact, some may double." The fishman then bent his leg and said, "Sea speed stomach drop kick." This managed to hit him in the stomach, launching him backward. Sanji gasped as he tried to hold his breath, but noticed that the fishman was now rotating. Before he can even know what was he doing or avoiding, the fishman launched a kick at his back. Fireflower heel drop kick. The fishman then twisted his body and twirled around as he said, "Rising thrust kick." This time the hit targeted his chin, causing his head to snap upwards. Finally, the fishman pulled his arm back and hit the cook in the face, causing blood to drop out of it. High-level exploding palm. Sanji at this moment knew that he needs to return to the surface to have a breath of air, but as he tried to swim away, Kurubi managed to block his path. He laughed at the cook's suffering. "Where do you think you're going? We haven't finished our fight yet." Sanji silently cursed him as he tried to find a way to escape. Kurubi looked at him and smirked. "I have to say, I never met a guy who can handle my hits, so that's something, but this little game of ours must end. And after this ends, I'll handle the villagers who dared to rebel against us, and punish Nami for her treason." Sanji's eyes widened as he continued on. "For all that talk about chivalry, and in the end, it didn't save you, prepared to die." Kurubi then grabbed him and began to speed toward the bottom of the park as he said, "Fatal pressure plunge." Sanji's head slammed against the rock at the bottom of the sea. Kurubi then looked at him, smirking, but saw that he was still alive. He wondered, how is he still alive after all this? He grabbed him and then went to prepare another one of his attacks, but Sanji had other plans. The cook knew that fishmen breathe with their lungs on the surface, and gills in water, so when they were near the surface of the water, the cook latched onto the fishman's gills, preventing him from breathing. This caused the fishman to run quickly out of air, so he went to the surface to breathe with Sanji surfacing with him. Once both of them were on the ground, Sanji took a deep breath and said, "This ends here, you overgrown seafood special." The fishman looked at him and stood up. "I will kill you right now. The previous time I used 100 tiles smashing true punch, now I'll use." He was cut off as Sanji kicked his neck. Collier shot. This made the fishman to fall backward, but Sanji followed this attack by epaulet, hitting him in the shoulder, making him hit the ground. The cook never let up as he delivered another kick. Cotyledal cell, this time hitting him in the legs when he tried to stand up. Sanji then said, "Be quiet." He then attacked with poitrine, hitting him in the chest area. Kurubi stood up in a rage and tried to send an attack towards Sanji, but the cook never allowed him to deliver as he kicked him in the chest, mud and shot. The fishman was then sent flying and fell on his back knocked out as Sanji said, "Where's all that strength that you talked about? Must be nothing but a myth." He looked to his side and saw that Zoro have also defeated his opponent. With Zoro, the man facepalmed as he saw his captain going flying away with Arlong probably trying to fight him. Well, at least this solved one of their problems. He then looked at the octopus fishman as he said, "Come on, let's start this already. I'm a little tired, and don't want to waste time with a clown like you." The octopus fishman ignored him as he ran to where Luffy and Arlong fell. "Arlong, don't worry. I'm coming to help. You don't need to fight this human." The fishman was stopped midway when Zoro put his sword in front of him. The octopus fishman frowned. "You dare block me?" Zoro smirked as he said, "You won't pass until I drop dead." The fishman tried to punch him, but Zoro dodged his attack as he swerved around him and swung his sword. At first glance, it seems that Zoro wasn't able to hit him, but upon closer inspection, everyone can see that Zoro gave Hachi a new haircut. Zoro then saw from the side Kurubi fighting Sanji. Hachi touched his hair as he bent backward looking at Zoro. "Why do you know how many hours it takes me to make my hair?" He crossed his arms frowning. "But you know what, I'll forgive you given that it's only my hair, and I'm still alive." Zoro growled as Hachi stood in front of him declaring, "Do you know that I'm the strongest member of Arlong's pirates who uses swords? Do you know what that means for your chances of defeating me?" Zoro raised his sword and attacked Hachi. "Does it look like I care? I'm going to defeat you. And that's it?" He then brought his sword down on the octopus who opened his arms trying to grab the sword. But Zoro managed to slice him in the face as he clapped his hands together causing him to be shocked that he was actually hit on his head. Zoro then yelled at him angrily, "Fight me already, you freak." The octopus flailed its hands around causing veins to throb on Zoro's head. The man then ran as the octopus jumped avoiding his hit, and kicked him in the back causing him to spit blood from his mouth. Zoro collapsed to the ground as he held his injuries. The man then hit the ground and blood appeared under him. Johnny and Yosaku began to panic from seeing Zoro's wounds from his fight with Mihawk were aggravated. The two swordsmen then saw Hachi appear holding a sword in each of his hands as he said, "Come on Rona, let's fight. Let's see if you can stand against my six sword style." Kurubi then talked with Hachi who seemed to have finished his fight, but then Zoro against all odds stood up and said, "Who said that you can leave yet? I haven't had my fun yet." Hachi growled trying to look intimidating, "You're still alive? Do you actually think that you can beat me, the master of the six sword style?" Zoro tilted his head, "Who knows? Maybe I will." He then shook his head, "No, your defeat is final." Zoro looked at Johnny and Yosaku, "Lend me your swords. I'm going to need them to end this lead skirmish of mine." Both Johnny and Yosaku were now worried for one reason, Zoro's condition. Johnny looked at Yosaku, "Brother doesn't look too good. I guess his wounds are either infected or that he managed to grab some kind of fever." Yosaku nodded his head knowing that if Zoro's wounds reopened, he will be out of commission. The two men then threw their swords toward the three-styled swordsman knowing that worrying about this now will cause more trouble down the road. The swordsman then took his bandana and wrapped it around his head as Hachi taunted him about his condition, but Zoro replied, "That's none of your concern given that you're about to be a dead man walking, or in your case, a dead fish man walking." Zoro frowned as he knew that he had one chance at this. He had somehow contracted a disease or a fever. Either way, he was in a tough situation. He heard both Johnny and Yosaku telling him to catch their swords, but Zoro merely took a deep breath as he readied himself for the fight. Zoro looked at Hachi raising his sword, "Come at me with everything that you got, octopus boy." Hachi, insulted, charged at Zoro. "Do you think that you can stand up to my six sword style? I'll show you the difference between our skills. I'll show you the difference between a fish man and a human." Zoro lowered his head as he heard Johnny and Endo avoid their swords. Hachi began to swing his swords as he bent his back and began twirling his swords, to Koashi Kaiken. Zoro suddenly grabbed the swords as he dodged the attack from Hachi, shocking the fishman. Hachi then said, "Let's see if you can dodge my continuous attack with three swords." Unknown to Hachi, Zoro began to prepare an attack, three sword style. The man then jumped dodging Hachi's three blades, bringing down his only blade. He disappeared for a moment only to appear behind Hachi, Toru Nagashi. At first, it seemed that nothing happened, but blood erupted from Hachi's chest as the fishman fell to his knees grabbing his chest from pain. On the side, everyone was shocked that Zoro managed to land a hit on Hachi after dodging all of his attacks. The fishman stood up and looked at Zoro saying, "Now you made me truly angry." He then tightened his grip on his swords. "I swear that this is the end of the line for you. Your three sword style can't stand to my six sword style, it's just not possible." Zoro then remembered his fight with Mihawk and scoffed, "Possible, huh? It seems that you made some mistake. I may only have three swords, but their weight combined is heavier than yours." Hachi was confused as to what the swordsman was talking about. He knew that the weight of his swords each was heavier than that of Zoro's three combined together. Maybe, the human was delirious from his injuries. Zoro raised his swords as Hachi put all of his swords together, and yelled, "Six-sword-style octopus stance." He then charged toward Zoro, who blocked the attack as Hachi said, "New Year's octopus opener." He then used his sword to open Zoro's defense, much to the latter's shock. Zoro wasn't able to do anything before Hachi slammed his head into Zoro's body, much to Yosaku's and Johnny's fear. Body slam. The fishman then threw Zoro's in the air. The swordsman looked at Hachi as he began to descend toward the ground. The fishman yelled up to the swordsman, "Look, this is the end of the line for you, Zoro. Have a safe landing." The octopus then put his blades together as he said, "Six-sword-style ultimate technique." He then began to twirl his blades around as he said, "Six swords waltz." He smiled at Zoro, "Now you'll become mincemeat." The moment Zoro hit the blades, Hachi yelled in pain as Zoro landed safely on the ground with no wounds as Hachi looked at his wounded hands. Everyone was shocked at how the three-style swordsman managed to do this, but Hachi knew how. He knew that Zoro, once he reached the blades, he began to spin himself on top of them. This enraged the fishman even more, looking at the green-haired man. "I'll end you now. I'm no circus clown for you to make fun of." Hachi then went for the same attack he made earlier. Zoro looked and frowned. He felt that his wounds were weighing down on him, but he couldn't afford to pass out from his wounds. Hachi charged at him, seeing that no one can avoid this technique, but the moment he attacked Zoro, the swordsman managed to slash the blades, and much to the fishman's shock the blades shattered into bits and pieces. Zoro glared at the octopus. "Now do you say the difference between the weight of our swords?" Zoro then opened his body as he took a position, and behind appeared to be a dragon, Tatsu. The fishman attacked him, trying to punch him, Maki. Suddenly, a twister of pressurized air lifted Hachi into the air as cuts began to appear all over his body the longer he was in the air. Finally, the twister stopped and Hachi's body fell to the ground. Zoro then heard him mumble before unconsciousness claimed him, "Who did I lose to? Only 3 swords?" Zoro replied, "Do I look like I care? But sorry, my mission ended when I defeated you." The man then leaned against a piece of rubble. He looked to the side and saw Sanji kick his opponent into oblivion. Zoro then asked him, "Did he cause you any trouble?" Sanji answered him, "Not as much as the moron you were fighting." Sanji then laid down beside him. Sanji pointed in the distance. "Look, I think Robin and Usopp are back." Usopp yelled, "Hey guys, we're back. We managed to kick Big Lip's ass." Robin laughed alongside him. Usopp looked behind him and noticed Nami coming up. The girl was astonished at the destruction the park has faced. She was shell-shocked when she saw the bloodied bodies of both Kurubi and Hachi. She looked at a bloodied Usopp and knew that he finished off Chu. Suddenly, the building of Arlong Park had something crash in it. Sanji grabbed Zoro and ran away as he knew that the main fight came toward them. From the rubble, Arlong stood, and he seemed to have been battered to a large extent. The fishman looked around, and saw his friend's broken forms on the ground. "What did you do to my brothers?" Zoro smirked, "What we promised you, defeat them." The fishman was enraged as he tried to attack the wounded man, but a punch connected with his face, sending him to the ground. Everyone then saw Luffy come from the wreckage holding a tree trunk. "Your fight is still with me. Time to take down the big fish." The last thing Arlong saw was the rubber boy launching himself at him with a huge chunk of concrete aimed at his chest. It was really troublesome. On one hand, if he managed to stop him, he would essentially allow him to be free. Not that it would be any different, he would just have to fight him, but he really wasn't in the mood to fight a human. On the other hand, if he allowed the concrete to hit him, it would do some serious damage to him, giving the human a weak spot to exploit in their fight if he was freed. The fishman spent too much time thinking about his options as he suddenly felt something very hard smash into his chest, knocking the wind out of him. He could certainly feel the bones in his chest cracking from the harsh attack as the concrete began to break into a million pieces, some hitting him in the face as the boy was freed from his rocky prison. The joy of his freedom lasted for a second as the boy was then rocketed to the sky from the sudden increase in speed and momentum. The fishman would have smiled that the boy was gone, but at the last moment, the boy grabbed him, taking him with him to the sky as the boy laughed like a madman. The fishman had to admit the boy was pretty gusty, if anything. The boy let him go as he reeled his hands back, yelling, "Gum gum." The fishman's eyes widened as the boy readied his attack, bazooka. The attack managed to land on his abdomen, nearly missing his chest where he could have done some serious damage to him, and caused him to have a hard time. The attack also caused him to be launched into the ground near the park. The fishman smashed into it, his back taking the most damage, but thanks to his tough skin, he managed to come back in one piece. The fishman stood up a little dazed. Fishman or not, hitting the ground can leave anyone with a headache. He then heard a harsh sound resonate from behind him. He looked only to see a small crater caused by the boy finally landing. The fishman sneered, hoping that the impact managed to end the boy, but instead he heard bellowing laughter coming from the crater. "This is fun. I should do this more. It was really funny," Luffy said as he came out of the crater dusting his clothes. He then looked eyes with Arlong. The boy quickly put himself in a fighting position as he yelled, "You I'm going to beat you for what you did to Nami. You made her cry. The fishman laughed at him. And what are you going to do about it? You're nothing, but a mere human. Don't tell me that you expect that you'll actually manage to beat. Luffy smiled. Fishman, human, angels, whatever you are, I'm going to defeat you for what you did to Nami. Get ready because your rule over this island will be cut short. The boy cracked his fists as he looked at Arlong, who seemed smug. The fishman laughed. You actually believe that you're going to win, boy. I'll tell you now to leave, and I may allow you to live if you don't come back here. Nami and I have an agreement, and when she fulfills it, she'll be able to live, and I'm sure that she won't be able to. He was cut off as he was punched into a tree by Luffy. The fishman stood up enraged that the rubber boy hit him. Luffy yelled back angrily, who do you think Nami is? Or Sav? I won't allow you to treat my friend like that ever again. She will have her village back, and you won't hurt her ever again. The boy sent his fist back. Gum gum. The fist came racing back to Arlong as the boy yelled, pistol. The fishman smirked as he grabbed the boy's hand and yanked toward him. Do you actually think, the fishman punched the boy in the face, that you stand a chance against me? The fishman lifted the boy and threw him over his back. He turned around to see another fist coming his way, but he ducked under it. The fishman opened his jaw and quickly bit down on the hand, causing Luffy to yell out in pain. The boy quickly kicked him in the face, forcing the fishman to release him as he began to survey his injuries. The boy frowned. I will beat you. He then pulled back his fist. Gum gum. The hand went straight to the fishman, who dodged, but Luffy smirked as the hand grabbed onto something. Recoil. The fishman turned to see a huge rock coming his way, causing his eyes to widen. The boy then yelled, Gum gum, pistol. His other hand went for an attack. The two attacks then hit the fishman head, causing his teeth to shatter. Luffy stood victorious over the shattered teeth as he yelled, I managed to destroy your teeth. Now, you can't bite me anymore. The boy laughed a little but was startled when the fishman began to laugh himself. The boy looked at him. What's so funny? The fishman replied through his broken teeth, that you think that you actually managed to do something. This confused the boy. The fishman put his hand into his mouth and began to pull on the broken teeth. He looked at Luffy. Did you know that sharks manage to replace all of their broken teeth? The fishman pulled out the broken set of teeth as new sharper ones popped in, shocking the rubber boy, and the new ones are always sharper. Luffy tilted his head sideways. Man, I wish I had something like that. The boy looked at the broken set of teeth and then at the fishman, asking him, can I have one of those? This made the fishman angry and he yelled, focus on the big picture. Arlong shook his head. With these teeth of mine, I'll be able to beat you. The fishman crossed the distance in a burst of speed, catching the rubber boy by surprise. The fishman then bit on the boy's neck, causing him to yell out in pain. Arlong tried to end the boy with one bite, but he kicked him hard on the chin, causing his new set of teeth to also shatter. Luffy backed away from him as he looked at his new bleeding wound. He looked at his opponent, who was chuckling. Tell me, do you see how we fishmen are superior? Do you still think that you can actually manage to survive this encounter? He then pulled the shattered set, as he prepared a new one. The fishman pulled the new one, which was replaced by another. He then pulled the new set, getting it replaced by a new set. The fishman now had one set of sharp teeth in each hand as he yelled, Gumtooth. He quickly lunged at Luffy, who jumped up a tree to avoid the attack. The fishman looked up to see the boy hanging on a branch like a monkey. The boy pulled a piece of fruit that was on another branch before throwing it at Arlong while yelling, Go die in a pond, you crazy fish. The fishman bit the bark of the tree, causing it to tumble down while Luffy jumped from it, high into the sky as he yelled, Gum gum. He kicked his leg back and aimed it at Arlong. The foot came back, blindsiding the fishman as it hit him in the chest, causing him to spit blood. Whip. Luffy then landed on the ground. He quickly raced toward Arlong and sent both his hands back, yelling, Gum gum bazooka. Arlong managed to dodge the attack, but Luffy tackled him to the ground and began to hit him, but it didn't do anything but annoy him. The fishman retaliated by using a set of sharp teeth to rip the boy's face off, but the boy managed to grab his hand before he took the set away, jumping away from the fishman. Arlong was confused as to why the boy wanted to take the set of teeth from him, but when he looked at the boy, he understood. The boy was now sporting the teeth in his mouth as he said, Look, now I have sharp teeth as you do. Arlong laughed a little. Do you think that this makes us on the same level? Do you know the thing we have on our speed that makes us superior to you? The boy stopped a little as he began to think, teeth. No, it's not that. Webbings. No, it's definitely not that. That pointy nose of yours. No, it's still not that. Arlong felt at that moment that the boy was insulting him, so he yelled, It's our strength, you moron. We have evolved to be stronger than your normal human. We've become Mother Nature's greatest creations. Where you failed, we were able to do it perfectly. The boy didn't reply at first as he stretched both arms, grabbed a tree and pooh. The boy then launched himself toward Arlong, hitting him in the gut, but what was the most surprising was that he bit him with his own sharp teeth, and managed to draw blood. The fishman yanked him away as he covered his bleeding stomach. The boy landed on his feet, shaking his head a little. I don't think so. I mean, I'm a human and I'm kicking your fishy butt. The boy hummed a little. Perhaps that you're just too weak to fight me. Arlong at that comment only saw red as he launched himself at the rubber boy who dared to insult him. I'll make footwear out of you. This will the last day of your life. He jumped toward Luffy, opening his jaw and saying, shark attack. He tried to bite the boy's wound from earlier, but the boy dodged him as he grabbed his shirt and threw him into a tree. Arlong stood up grumbling, this is taking way longer than I expected. He looked at the boy who smirked at him. Luffy then pulled his leg back as he yelled, Gum Gum Whip. The boy sent his leg quickly toward Arlong. The fishman jumped away from it but grabbed onto it. He then pulled the boy and began to use his leg as a focus point as he twirled the boy around in the air, hitting him with various items in the forest beyond the park. Arlong chuckled, I have to admit this is kinda fun. He looked at Luffy who was bleeding and asked him with a smug look, tell me rubber boy, what do you think? Do you think that this right now is fun? He was shocked when the rubber boy smiled at him and said, yeah, this is really cool, but the boy then sent his arm grabbing a tree. The boy then used his other leg to kick Arlong in the chest, causing him to release him. Luffy quickly tied his legs to the tree and he began to coil himself around it as he looked at the fishman with a grin. The boy then sent his arms grabbing Arlong, now it's your turn to have some fun. The boy then began to twirl around with Arlong in his grasp, causing the fishman to slam into his surroundings. Luffy then let go of him, sending him hurling into a tree. Arlong hit the tree harshly as he felt his body aching from the heavy treatment. He stood up and looked to see the boy racing toward him as he pulled both his arms back and attacked him straight in the gut. This launched him away, causing a couple of trees to break and get destroyed. The fishman looked at him as his eyes dilated like a shark in the wild. He looked at Luffy and yelled, it's over you brat. I'm going to kill you no matter what. The fishman ran toward Luffy to end him, but the boy jumped and punched him in the back of his end, causing the fishman to kiss the dirt. He then stood up and caught Luffy's attempt to kick him, and pulled him only for Luffy to raise his leg and yell, Gum Gum Stump. The leg hit him in the head, making release the boy. Luffy jumped away from him. Luffy then looked at T and grabbed it, yanking it from the ground. He raced toward the fishman, causing the latter's eyes to widen as Luffy yelled, Gum Gum Bat. The rubber boy then hit him straight in the face, sending him back into Arlong Park and hitting the wall leading to it and leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. The rubber boy quickly ran after him to continue his fight. When Arlong exited the wall of his park, he was on his park's ground. He stood up and looked at his injuries. His body was aching in pain, and the worst thing was because he was fighting a human of all things. He looked around only to see the two humans who were with the boy laying on the ground. This would have been something that he would have celebrated, but he also saw the unconscious forms of Kurubi and Hachi laying there in their own blood. He looked at the two humans. What did you both do to my brothers? How dare you do this to them? He looked at the one he identified earlier as Pirate Hunter Zoro. What we promised you, defeat them. The fishman glared at Zoro and ran to attack, letting his guard down only for something to hit him straight in the face, sending him crashing to the ground. He looked up to see the human he was fighting. Luffy breathed heavily as he was covered by wounds. Your fight is still with me, Arpong. Arlong stood up and cracked his neck. You could have used this chance to escape. You know, you may have been able to get some good hits on me because we were in the woods, but now we're back into my element, the sea, so. The boy didn't allow himself to finish his rant as he chucked the tree trunk at him. The fishman opened his mouth and crashed it in his teeth as he said, do you believe that you can beat me now? Now that I'm on my playing field? Luffy smiled, I know I will, and I will do it for Nami. He looked to the side and saw Nami. He waved at her, yelling, hey Nami, who are you doing? I am about to end this Arpong guy. Did you come to see me end him? The girl blinked in shock as she saw Luffy beating Arlong around. The fishman on the other hand was unamused as he looked at the girl and said, what are you doing here, Nami? Did you come all this way to see me kill those idiots? The girl stood her ground as she hit the ground with her staff, looking him straight in the eye. No Arlong, I came to see you get defeated. Your reign over the Komoni Islands will end today. The fishman smiled as he backed away toward the water. Those are some bold words, but I hope you're able to keep them. He then dove straight into the water, confusing everyone. Nami's eyes widened, yelling, Luffy, watch out. He's going to attack any moment. Luffy looked around him warily. Nami just warned him that the fishman he was fighting was going to attack him any moment now, so he had to be careful. The guy had sharp teeth. He had first-hand experience in how painful bait from them can be, and he didn't want a repeat of that, plus add to that the sharp nose that he didn't use. Though it might look like it, Luffy's body wasn't invincible, so he wasn't too keen on having too many sharp objects go through it. Suddenly, he saw Arlong's fin moving along the water, causing him to jump back. The fin then began to move in circles, and zigzag lines confused the boy as to what he was going to do. Usopp said, Luffy, don't wait for him to attack. Do something and attack him first. The boy frowned, and how am I supposed to do that? I sink in water. I need him to get out from. The boy continued to argue with Usopp as Arlong looked from the water below at him and smirked. Shark on. The fishman said as he torpedoed toward him. Darts. The fishman jumped from the water and using his nose managed to slash the boy across the chest, causing blood to gush out. The fishman landed in the second story of his park. Had enough? He asked in a sarcastic tone. Luffy replied by saying, I'm still standing, fish boy. The fishman then initiated his attack for a second time as the boy jumped out of the way only to see Arlong's nose embedded itself inside the cement of the park, causing Luffy to say, that nose of yours is truly strong. It can cut through rock like a knife through butter. Sanji on the other hand was just baffled regarding how strong Arlong's nose was. The fishman then yelled, shark on darts. His body moved quickly from its position, slashing Luffy across the chest one more time, but this time the fishman decided to retreat once more inside the water to gain some advantage over the human boy. Luffy stood there as he clutched his wounds. He looked at the water knowing that Arlong was hiding there, but he then heard Usopp, Luffy, what in the world are you doing just standing there? Move before he can attack you once more? The boy shook his head, causing many to wonder what he was planning. He looked at them as he flashed them a smile saying, no worries guys. I'll just have to fish him from the sea when he comes. He then used one hand to grab the fingers of the other and stretch them saying, hey, Arpong, come and get some. From under the water, the fishman heard Luffy and then began to charge toward him at incredible speeds. Once he was out, he launched himself at Luffy and it seemed he managed to hit the boy, but upon was noticed that the sharp nose was an inch away from the boy's neck thanks to his gum shield. The force of the attack though said to the wall of the building of the park, I'm alive, nice. Suddenly, the terrace beside Luffy exploded as Arlong popped out of it, while the rubber boy jumped into the air to avoid being hit by the sharp nose. The fishman looked at him and readied himself for another attack, shark on. Luffy then stretched all of his fingers till they were 2 meters long as he looked at Arlong, gum. The fishman then attacked the boy as he sped toward him. Darts, however, the fishman was caught inside Luffy's fingers as the boy smiled, net. Arlong's eyes grew wide as his nose was now stuck between the rubber boy's fingers, who began to swing him around before throwing him to the ground. The boy then put his feet together making form the shape of a spear as he yelled, gum. He sent his legs down, hitting the fishman straight in the abdomen and making him cough blood, spear. Luffy followed this by sending a barrage of punches in Arlong's way, gum gatling. For a moment it seemed that Luffy had won the fight, but Arlong then stood up and grabbed the rubber boy midair as he swung him around yelling, how dare you? You a low human fight your superior in every way and form. The fishman then tossed him to the building of the park. Arlong ran toward him and punched the wall as Luffy ducked saying, hey, you kinda missed me. The fishman smirked as he grabbed something from the opposite end of the wall and pulled it out. It was a blade that looked like shark teeth were lined together. Nami looked at it and gasped. It was a weapon known for its destruction, and Arlong never used it unless he wanted to destroy everything that is around him. The girl quietly whispered, it's Kurubi. Everyone in the crowd then took back a step in fear of the legendary weapon of Arlong. The fishman stared at Luffy and suddenly began to rotate as he made his way toward the boy. Luffy jumped on the building of the ark as Arlong followed him, forcing him to ascend higher and higher till he found a window and jumped into it, crashing into it inside the room. Down in front of the park, Nami looked at the window and knew where Luffy had ended up. It was a place that caused her misery for so many years. It was a little prison of hers that she was trapped in with no hope of escaping. She felt someone grab her hand. She looked to see Robin, who was quiet the entire fight. The girl smiled and told her, this is all about to be over. Just wait for a little bit. Luffy will end him. He's barely standing for someone boasting about how superior he is. Nami chuckled, agreeing with Robin, who Arlong looked like he was about to drop dead from the fight he had with the rubber boy. In the room Luffy crushed into, Arlong came in holding his weapon, end of the line, brat. Luffy looked around the room, only seeing piles of paper after paper. He tilted his head as he asked, what is this room? It seems that there is only paper here. Arlong laughed, boy, you have no idea what are you talking about. These papers you see are all the hard work that Nami made for years for my crew. She drew map after map, helping us acquire information and data to help form our empire. Even if you search the entire sea, you won't find someone as talented as she is. She's, for a lack of a better term, a prodigy. Luffy nodded his head as he looked at a table where he saw a pen, while Arlong said, and it'd be a waste if we allowed those skills of hers to be wasted on you humans. If you're mice, then Nami is for sure a cat, and a smart cat for sure. Luffy grabbed the pen and stared at it. He simply stated, this pen is covered with blood. Arlong then put Kurubi at Luffy's neck with one of its teeth. For Nami, her happiness is to be here drawing maps for us. For the sake of my ambition. Once we have all the data we need to conquer this world to form my empire, then I might think of letting her go. Luffy let go of the pen, as Arlong finished his rant. Do you believe that you can use her better than me? Luffy grabbed the tooth of Kurubi as Arlong tried to pull it back, but failed. He looked at the boy whose grasp on the weapon began to harden till he finally heard the sound of cracking. Moments later, his weapon was shattered into a million pieces as it fell to the ground, much to his shock. As Luffy growled, use. He looked Arlong straight in the eye. Just what do you think she is? A tool for you to exploit. Arlong replied, she is a brilliant cartographer. It'd be a shame if all of her skills were wasted on you humans. All I said, she's a cat and smart. She's leagues above you humans. The fishman carried on, she'll continue to draw maps for me as long as I need her. I'll feed her, and buy clothes for her. She'll live a queen among her peers. And all I ask is to continue drawing her maps. At the end of the day we're crewmates. Luffy then stood up and looked around before springing into action as he kicked the desk that Nami would use to draw onto the outside. On the outside, people were wondering what was happening as Luffy continued to destroy everything in the room, much to Arlong's anger. Only Nami understood what was happening as she saw everything she worked for getting destroyed, and it felt like a weight was removed from her chest. She remembered the horrible times she was forced to stay there, hours on end only drawing maps. In the room, Arlong swung his weapon at the rubber boy, who jumped up, causing the weapon to hit a bunch of maps. The fishman snarled in anger, grabbing the boy and biting down on his neck. This went for long enough, you rubber fiend. Luffy then grabbed his nose and began to tug on it. I don't care about what you say, or what you care about, and then with a twist, he managed to kick Arlong off him, but I now know how to help Nami. Arlong grabbed at his broken nose as he glared at the rubber boy, who said, for Nami to be finally happy, this room must be destroyed, and removed from the face of existence. The boy then kicked his foot through the roof of the room, as Arlong readjusted his nose, don't get too conceited. I'll never let you destroy all my hard work. Shark on. The fishman then began to rotate his body, aiming for Luffy. Luffy then yelled, gum gum. Tooth. The fishman finished as he bit into his opponent's side. Luffy then brought back his leg, hitting Arlong in the back as the fishman released his teeth from him. Battle axe. Luffy declared as his foot dug into Arlong's back, sending him crashing through multiple floors of the building. On the outside, the building collapsed. Everyone looked in awe as they saw their nightmare finally over, but they were all worried for the rubber boy who fought for them. Nami looked the most worried as she wished for him to appear. If he died for her sake, she will never be able to smile again. Seconds later, something emerged from the destroyed building. It was Luffy, much to everyone's relief, who looked worse for wear. He looked at the sky and yelled, Nami, you're my crewmate, got it? The girl wiped her tears as she hugged the dark-haired girl beside her, saying, I got it. The villagers all began to celebrate as some went to tell the other villages that Arlong's rule was over and that he was defeated. Someone then yelled, enough of this ruckus. All the villagers turned to see Nezumi, who had a huge grin as he said, thank you all for what you did today, and for the thrilling battles, but I'm here on marine business right now. The corrupt marine walked forward. What a good day, first the 10 million, and now all the riches from Arlong Park. So from now on, it will be known that I was the one who defeated Arlong and his crew. The marine heard the sickening noises of bones being cracked. He looked behind him to see his men on the ground withering with pain. Nami then walked toward him as she said, look here, I'm going to say this once and only once. All the money Arlong has will go to rebuild the villages he destroyed. Back by noon, or else. The marine scoffed, what will you do if I didn't do what you told me? An iron hand then grabbed him. He turned around to see Zoro, who grinned devilishly. You know it ain't cool to be such a wet blanket when everyone's happy. An intense baiting from the crew was inflicted on the man and his team as they now all laid in their blood. Nami then walked to him. I'll see you today at noon, got it? The man nodded as Nami smacked him with her staff, while other people cheered her on. She then kicked him with the rest of his men to the sea. Nezumi looked at Luffy and Robin, yelling, listen here you brats, this won't be the end of this. I will have your heads for this, you rotten pirates. Get ready because this is far from over. Luffy shrugged as he didn't care too much. He then joined the other villagers who began to prepare to party. Back at Belmir's grave, Nami sat in front of it as she asked Genzo and Nejiko, hey guys, if Belmir was still alive, do you think she'll stop me from becoming a pirate? The old scarred man was shocked that she still wanted to be a pirate after this. What, of course not. How can she allow you to? He paused for a little, but if she did, would you do as told? Nejiko in the background shook her head. Nami only stuck out her playfully, nope, never had and never will. Back in the village, the celebrations were prepared as everyone was assigned something, except one Rorona Zoro, who was stuck in the doctor's office getting the lecture of the century about his wounds. Luffy sat beside him as he said, man, after this we should really invest in finding a doctor to help take care of us. This made the doctor yell in anger, now, you came to this conclusion. In the Marines' headquarters in the area, Nezumi was on the transponder snail as he was making a call to headquarters. Hello, this is Nezumi from the 16th branch. I called here to inform you of a new pirate on the rise. His name is Luffy and he's accompanied by some black-haired girl that goes by Robin. He also has 4 other crew members. I demand that we put a bounty on his head, given that not he only defeated Arlong, but he's very violent in nature. On the opposite side of the line, a Marine was writing everything Nezumi said. The Marines around him scrambled to find a picture of the boy and the girl mentioned. In the end, they managed to find one for both. For Luffy, it was a picture from when he first had the Mary smiling at the camera. And for Robin, it was during the fight with Chu when she was crossing her arms. In the end, Nezumi screamed, "It is important that everyone take this seriously. He's a vicious monster without no regard for human life. He's to be taken in dead or alive. I demand that he and this girl will have a bounty on their heads in every place possible." When he ended the call, Nezumi smiled. In the Komoni Islands, the news of Arlong's defeat had spread like wildfire, as villages all around the area came to Kokoyashi village to celebrate the fishermen's defeat at the hand of their saviors. Drinks were being put around as well as music was being that the entire village was dancing with it. People were forcing rings and dancing around happily. Sanji was sitting inside a small bar surrounded by girls as he had a droopy grin on his face as he told them about his victory over the fishman that he fought with, the girls listening intently to him like he was telling them a life lesson. Zoro was currently sitting inside a drinking ring and was having a drink off with several people, most of which were already down for the count. The swordsman was then slammed headfirst into the table as the doctor who treated him dragged him back to the infirmary, yelling something about the man not understanding what taking it easy means. Usopp himself was now sitting around kids from different villages telling them multiple tales to keep them entertained away from the rowdier bunch. Somewhere else, Robin sat with Nami as she had her new tattoo finished. The dark-haired girl smiled as she asked her, "It must feel like a weight has been removed from your chest, doesn't it?" The orange-haired girl replied, "It feels like a nightmare that has been haunting her for years have been finally ended. I feel like I'm a new person. No more running around in fear. No more going to shady places to gain money. No more making maps for people other than myself." The girl smiled as she eyed her new tattoo. It was where her old one was. It was a pinwheel and an orange branch crossed together. Robin looked at the tattoo as she asked, "Does it have any meaning? Or is it just random?" The girl nodded. "The orange is supposed to remind me of my mom. She used to remember to love of oranges. And she wanted one day to open an orange orchid. She always encouraged my dreams, and I want to honor her by completing them. The other one is my own personal secret." Robin pouted at her saying, "You're no fun, and here I told you everything you know about me." The orange-haired laughed as she released something. She hadn't heard laughter for a while. She looked at Robin as she said, "Robin, where's Luffy? Usually, you're both tied to each other at the hip. Normally, none of you two would leave the other." She had to stifle her laughter at Robin's confused expression as she told her something that she didn't know. Robin shook her head as she answered, "Well, it's true that we're always together, but we still do our own thing. He sometimes goes to watch clouds while I like to read books, so no, I don't know where he is." She then added, "But if I know him, and I do, he must be looking for a melon ham that he heard about." Nami then said, "How about I lead you there, and then we have a drinking competition?" Back with Luffy, he was walking around the area as he kept looking for the melon ham. The boy was now miles away from where the party was going on, but he pressed forward. The boy ended up near what seemed to be a cross with Genzo sitting in front of it. Genzo then opened a bottle of booze and he poured it on the grave. "You always liked booze, didn't you, Belmere?" Luffy stood behind the man who asked him, "What are you doing over here?" The boy blinked as he said, "Well, I wanted to find some melon ham, but I couldn't find it, so I began to search for it, but I ended up here." The man eyed him up and down before shrugging. Luffy then said, "I supposed to say something, in this case, compromising, no, not it, consideration, still not it, I know, my condolences for her." The man chuckled a little as he stood up, and said to the boy, "That little girl you're planning to take with you on your journey is the daughter of this village. She sacrificed her smile to guarantee our survival, and only today that she finally managed to smile." He looked the boy straight in the eye, "So do your best for her to not lose her smile, or I'll be hunting till the ends of the world, got it?" The boy smiled, "Of course, I would never make Nami lose her smile. I'm her captain, I'm supposed to keep her happy." The man smiled back as he guided the boy back to the village. Back in the village, Luffy saw Robin sitting with a ham melon beside her, but when he got close his blood got cold. Robin was drunk. Sure, she can handle her alcohol, but when she gets drunk she begins to slip her secrets. And then Luffy accidentally entered the bathroom while I was showering as my mom at the same time entered the house. The rubber boy grabbed her and told her to be quiet. He looked only to see Nami writing on a small notebook with the title, "Blackmail on Robin." The boy dragged his girlfriend away as he grabbed the meal he was looking for, hoping to forget that this ever happened. The next day, the crew was ready to launch off as they had everything prepared. The only thing that was stopping them was Nami being late. Usopp asked, "Where's Nami? I thought she told us to be here early." Zoro shrugged, "I say since she's late we leave her and go on without her." Sanji hit him with his foot as he growled, "I will never leave Nami Swan behind. Shun that I'm here?" Usopp then asked, "And what's the remaining percent represent?" Sanji answered him, 48.4% for Robin Schwan, and 3.2% for my dreams. Usopp's sweat dropped as he fell over saying, "I should have expected this, but isn't Robin taken by Luffy?" He then saw Sanji fall over hitting the ground with his fist, talking about how the world is unfair. Robin, who was beside him, shook her head in amusement as she said that she has something to take care of, and then she'll join us. The girl looked at the horizon and she saw Nami herself standing there. The girl then yelled, "Set sail." Everyone was shocked, but Luffy said, "Well, you heard the lady. Let's set sail." Everyone began working except Sanji, who wailed about leaving Nami behind. The orange-haired girl then began to run toward the ship. The girl saw that there were a lot of her neighbors in her place. Every one of them was shocked that the girl would leave them without saying goodbyes. The girl zigzagged through the crowd as she jumped onto the ship. Once she was on the ship, she lifted her shirt as wallets fell from her. The villagers all checked their pockets only to see that they were empty. They began to yell at the girl for being a thief before their yells became goodbyes. Nami only stood there as she yelled, "Goodbye, we'll meet again when I finish drawing the map of the world." Luffy stood beside her as he said, "Welcome back, Nami." Nami smiled at him. "It is good to be back home. The bounties." In the Marines' headquarters, water was peacefully following through a bamboo stick as it fell onto a rock below it with a frog croaking beside it. However, inside the Marines' headquarters, there was nothing but peace. Multiple Marine captains, commanders, and even some vice admirals were all sitting inside a room as they were discussing the sudden rise of a new pirate crew that took the East Blue by surprise. So our branches in the East Blue are unable to deal with this new crew. One of the other men nodded solemnly. A man with a bald head with green sideburns wearing sunglasses then put a projector showing 3 pirate bounties: Buggy the Clown, 15 million belly, Don Krieg, 17 million belly, Arlong the Saw, 20 million belly. The man known as Brand New stated, "In the East Blue, the average bounty on anyone is 3 million, but these guys managed to get themselves a strong crew, getting along the way a very high bounty that exceeded 10 million, but even they were crushed." He then slammed the bounties of both Luffy and Robin on the wall, but these uprising rookies managed to end all 3. So the world assumed a very reasonable amount of belly on their heads so that the Marines can be on the watch for them, and uproot this evil while it's still in its budding phase. Outside the headquarters in the training ground, a giant Marine was yelling at the new members, "Those who wish to flee, I order you to flee this instant, because the sole purpose of this fortress is to secure peace and harmony against the forces of wickedness represented by pirates. Even the slightest act of cowardice is unforgivable. It is not a crime for the masses to be weak, for we must protect them from any heinous crime and exterminate the source of it under the name of absolute justice." This was met with, "Yes, sir." In order part of the Marine headquarters, a loud voice yelled in anger, "Garp, what in the world is wrong with your family and everyone related to it?" This man was Sengoku, the fleet admiral of the Navy headquarters. The man was steaming with anger, so much so the tea can be boiled on his head. It was like Garp's entire bloodline had to do something villainous or break the law. Was it so much to ask for them to live their lives normally like other people, or join the Marines? The man didn't have too long to have his answers as the doors to his room were still shut, but his friend bursted into the room through the wall, leaving a human-sized hole in it. This made Sengoku yell, "For the love of God, start using the door next time. I'm tired of paying for repairs every time you enter this room." The man known as the hero of the Marines scratched his head sheepishly as he said, "Nah, this is way cool." He then looked at his longtime friend asking, "I heard you saying something about my family. What did Ace do this time?" Sengoku rubbed his forehead as he remembered one of Garp's other failed Marine projects. The man then yelled, "Don't remind me about him. He's the worst of the worst. I thought that with you in the picture that he's actually going to be a Marine, but he's a goddamn pirate." Sengoku then grabbed a small rubber ball and began to squeeze it in hope of relieving his stress. The hero of the Marines causally sat in a chair as he said, "He's not a pirate. He's just going through a phase. Don't worry about him. I'll personally go talk with him, and make sure that he comes to Marine Ford to sign up for the Navy." The echo of Sengoku's facepalm could be heard for miles. The bearded man decided to cut to the chase. "No, I mean the other one. Your other grandkid. His wanted bounty was just dropped right in front of my desk with some girl on his crew." The fleet admiral sighed again. His friend was the worst person to be near him if you ever hoped for something to be good. He opened a bottle of painkillers and drank them all, hoping that he won't die from anger or stress. He then handed him the bounty posters saying, "Here, look for yourself." The hero of the Marine looked at the bounty posters as he began laughing. His friend's vein popped as he mentally groaned, wondering why did expect a different reaction from his longtime friend other than laughter. "Okay. I have to admit the little runt got me good, but I didn't expect him to really live up to his constant banter about being a pirate." Sengoku almost fell off his chair. Garp's grandson always told him he was planning to become a pirate, and the idiot left him free to his devices. Well, I honestly thought Olivia and Dayton might change their mind about becoming a pirate. Heck, they even managed to get him to read and write. Turns out, he's really smart, but his devil fruit is affecting his mind, but with effort, he can be as smart as well anyone, but I won't say a super genius. Sengoku felt a shiver across his spine. "First, who's the Dayton person you're talking about?" The hero of the Marines looked at him saying, "A mountain bandit whom I entrusted to raise my grandchildren to be Marines, but she didn't do a good job. I really have to go and talk with her about this." Sengoku then roared, "You put your grandchildren in the hands of 2 criminals. At least the mountain bandit isn't as bad as Nico Olivier is." Are you trying to bring over the destruction of the world? Clam down, Robin's with him. She's gonna stop him from bringing the end of the world you're talking about. She's a good and sweet girl. Garp said, trying to placate his friend's worry, who suddenly recognized something. He looked at the wanted bounty poster of the girl and she seemed oddly familiar. He couldn't help but feel what he saw before. He picked up a bunch of old wanted bounty posters from his desk and began to scroll through them to help him placate his fears. Sengoku suddenly stopped his search as his eyes landed on an old wanted bounty poster. He swallowed a lump that formed in his throat as he said, "Why do those two women look exactly the same?" The man held both Robin's and Olivia's wanted bounty posters. The heroes of the Marines laughed. "Welcome, it's because Olivia here is Robin's mother. Robin is a good girl. I'm sure she went with Luffy to stop him from causing too much trouble. I couldn't ask for a better daughter-in-law." Sengoku took a deep breath as he imagined the spawn of both a Nico and a Monkey D hopping around the world. It was a nightmare that came to life. The Admiral couldn't just take it anymore, so he yelled at him, "Get the fuck out of here. You started the apocalypse." The hero of the Marines then jumped out of the room like he had his butt on fire, which Sengoku saw happen more than once. The man relaxed as he thought about investing in a bunker to hide in when the end comes near. In the New World, a huge ship was on the waves of the New World. There was a continuous party in it as people from all around it were jumping happily as they danced together. In the center of the ship was an enormous man of epic proportions. The man was tall and muscular. He had multiple battle wounds on his chest. He was wearing black pants and a white coat. On his face, there was a long white mustache. He was none other than the great pirate Whitebeard, also known as Edward Newgate. The man was currently lounging in his chair as his first mate Marco the Phoenix was sitting on his shoulder. He was a tall man wearing blue pants and a pink coat. His most striking feature was his pineapple-shaped hair. The man looked at his captain and said, "So how is the party, father?" The man known as Whitebeard chuckled as he said, "It's fine, my boy. It really is. I couldn't ask for me than this. I'm truly happy." However, everyone stopped when a huge plume of fire erupted from one of the crow nests, as a shirtless man came flying down with a goofy expression on his face. The man was none other than Portuga's D-Ace, or better known as Fire Fist Ace. The man raced toward his father holding something. The Flame Man then stood in front of his captain. "Look at this, father. My little brother and sister finally had their bounties come out, and they sure are big ones." The huge man took from Ace's hand and looked at it and then at the other. The huge man whistled. "Wow, that sure is a lot from some rookie from the East Blue," and he took down all the big names there too. Ace rubbed his chin. "I wonder if those two got together before they began to sail together." Marco looked at him and said, "Isn't that incest? Not that I'm judging anyone." Ace waved his hands. "They're siblings with me through a sake ritual thing, but aren't with each other." Robin was so clear with her feelings that I could see it from the moon. Whitebeard stood up as he said, "Well, you heard him, boys. Not only did his brother and sister have their first bounties, but they also got together." The man scratched his chin, adding, "That sounded wrong on many fronts, but who cares, let the party begin." And with that, the party on the Whitebeard ship exploded even further than before as booze was distributed around for everyone to have and drink. On an island inside the New World, a man was standing on the shores of the said island and began to yell in panic. The others with the man didn't understand why he was yelling till they saw a small boat sailing toward them, and everyone began to flee away knowing who was the person that was aboard it. Once the man set his ship on the shore, he looked at the frightened man and said, "I came here to talk with your captain. I have some news that he might be interested in." The men then ran away from them as he followed them at a causal pace to where their captain was lounging. Inside the forest on the island, a man with red hair was sitting with an intense expression on his face. He was disturbed when one of his many came barreling forward. Captain, Dracula Mahawk is here, and he's saying that he needs you in for important business." The man looked at the newly arrived Mahawk. "What do you want, Hawkeyes? As you can see, I have the worst hangover after a huge party yesterday, and my head is really hurting me." Mahawk didn't pay him any mind as he said, "Do you remember the story that you told me about the child that you sacrificed an arm for, and in the end, you gave him your favorite straw hat?" The man's eyes immediately lit up as he said, "You're talking about Luffy. Why didn't you start with that?" Mahawk raised an eyebrow at the sudden behavior change, but asked, "So tell me, did you meet him or something? Did he become a pirate like he said he would, or did Garp make him into a marine like he said he would?" Mahawk shook his head. "No, I came across him as I was chasing a piece of prey that managed to escape from me. He had some promising people in his crew, but I came for something else." He then handed the man known as Shanks something. "I got it this morning." Shanks looked at the object. It was bounty posters, and there was one for Luffy, and it had a huge number, and one was for a beautiful black-haired girl. "Hey guys, come here and say this." Little Luffy had his first bounty poster. Everyone came around, but Shanks asked, "How's the chick, by the way?" Mahawk replied, "His girlfriend, I presume." After that, a pin drop could be heard. "What? He has a girlfriend?" Everyone yelled in shock, causing Mahawk to raise an eyebrow. Shanks chuckled, "Well, I have to say that I didn't expect this." Luffy seems so dull to romance. Never thought him to have a girlfriend before me. The man then noticed Mihawk raise and went to go away as Shanks said, "Where do you think you're going?" The man replied, "I came here to give you this, and my business is done, so I am not needed here anymore." The man began to walk away from there, but Shanks grabbed his arm. Shanks shook his head. "Now, you can't just come here uninvited without getting properly served." Moments later, Shanks was inviting Mihawk to drink with him as he pushed a bottle of sake to his face with the other man taking it and drinking it slowly. In another part of the New World, a ship was sailing away from an island as people were waving them away. The captain of the ship looked at the happy faces of the people he just helped and smiled. "I like the feeling of seeing people smiling, it just makes me really happy. Dershishishishi." The man was none other than Jaguar D. Saul. The man who risked everything to help save the island of Ohara. He looked back at his crew who were all waving happily back at the people. His men were mostly orphans who lost their homes from wars or diseases. The man then saw a seagull hand a bunch of wanted bounty posters. He began to scroll through them. He saw some new names on the list such as the Surgeon of Death from the north, Captain Kidd and Killer from the south, Beak from the west, and Straw Hat Luffy. The man looked at the bounty posters and saw both Luffy and Robin on them as laughed loudly. Dershishishishi, they got their first bounty already. I can't believe it, and it's really big. He then looked at his men saying, "Men, we must party tonight in the honor of my friends for having their first bounty out." The entire crew then cheered on. Back in the East Blue on Dawn Island, Makino's bar was full of patrons as they all partied with the arrival of Luffy's new bounty along with Robin. The entire bar was jumping around with smiles and happiness, but only one person was annoyed. "What the heck are you all partying about? These kids are about to bring shame and trouble to this village." The man was mostly ignored by everyone. He then looked at Olivia. "Shouldn't you of all people be worried about your island's fate? What will happen now if they knew that she's your daughter?" The woman shrugged. "Given that I and Robin didn't have any type of connection with Ohara since the day we left it, even they will have a hard time pinning anything on them. Plus, they have a navy base on the island now. The scholars can't breathe let alone research the poneglyphs." Makino then came around saying, "Olivia, I need your help in the kitchen." The woman put on her apron and walked to help Makino, leaving the old man to grumble alone bitterly as he said, "Why can't this island produce normal people?" Up in the mountains, Dayton was sitting and drinking tea calmly as some of the men entered the room, causing the big woman to yell, "What the hell is happening to your brains? Did you lose it or something?" She was shocked when they only continued to look at her like lunatics. Dagara then pulled out wanted bounty posters as he said, "Boss, look at this." The woman looked at them and laughed. "Well, what do you know? The little moron and his girl finally had their bounties come out." She stood up smiling as she said, "Well, boys, this calls for a celebration." The bandits then began to haul out the booze. In Shell's Island, Rika was sitting with her mom when the new bird came flying through the window. The older woman gave the bird money as she took the newspaper. The woman began to scroll through it till something caught her eye. She yelled at the marine captain that was eating with some of his troops, "Look at this. I guess the boy's first bounty came out." The man stroked his chin looking at the poster as he let out a whistle. "That's a huge bounty compared with the rest of the East Blue's standards." He looked at the list of crimes. Wow, he took all of the East Blue's big wigs. He definitely deserves this bounty. Rika jumped up saying, "When I grow up, I want to be just like Big Brother Luffy." She went outside running as the marine choked on his food while her mother laughed. The man coughed as he said, "I wonder how that boy who we took in must be feeling right now." In Orange Town, the little place was still in its restoration due to the buggy pirates. The town mayor looked at the people working day in and out to fix the town. He looked at the newspaper and smiled. One of the citizens then asked him, "Is there something that caused you to smile?" The mayor replied, "Just seeing an old friend of mine in the paper." The citizen shrugged as the mayor looked over his shoulders wondering what Luffy might be doing right now. He will never forget the great service the boy had getting rid of Buggy the Clown. In Syrup Village, Carrot, Pepper, and Onion were all running to Kaya's mansion. The trio ran inside it pushing aside Mary, who tried to greet them to reach Kaya's room. The girl now looked healthier than before. Her skin wasn't as pale as she looked to be. Her face was adorned with a huge smile as she was reading a medic book. The girl promised herself to become a doctor, so when Usopp returns she will be there for him to treat his wounds. "Kaya, look at this." The girl looked at the bounty potters and smiled. "Well, it appears Luffy and Robin had their first bounty poster come out." The girl smiled remembering Robin was the one who pushed her to confess her feelings for Usopp. The boys shook their heads as they pointed at something inside the paper. "Look at this." The girl looked hard and tried to figure out what the boys were talking about. She finally managed to fish out what the boys were talking about. On Luffy's poster in the far end was Usopp's head sticking out. The girl chuckled as she said, "Well, it appears that Usopp is now a wanted pirate." The trio began to cheer as Kaya looked at them smiling, wondering if this was what it felt like to have brothers. She couldn't help but wonder what Usopp was doing right. Was he fighting giants like he said he would? Or was he just making up stories to entertain others right now? She wished she can be with him right now, but she can help him in other ways. In the Barati, the restaurant was as lively as ever. Outside the floating ship was a pirate ship floating with all of its crew members moaning in pain after having to deal firsthand with the waiters of the ship. The previous crew members of the Krieg fleet were now a new part of the family there. Jin was currently buying the mail for Zeph. The man saw something causing him to run in a hurry as he shouted, "Zeph, look at this. The new wanted bounty posters are here and you won't believe who made it to the front page." The man from the kitchen walked out with a curious face. "Alright, you have my attention. Let me see what you brought to me." The man looked at the bounty posters. "Well, what do you know? The little fish have finally become a big one." I have to admit that he took down some big names along with Krieg. He looked at Jin and smacked him with his wooden leg saying, "Now get back to work. I don't pay you to daydream." Jin quickly ran away to take an order in hopes of avoiding the old man's wrath, while the man himself wondered what Sanji might be doing. In Kokoyashi village, Genzo was sitting polishing his weapon collection. He hated that Arlong got his grubby little fingers on it, and ruined some pieces. He wishes he got to shoot him, but he was gone so he can't complain right now. The door of his house was then kicked open as Nejiko walked in. "Look at what arrived this morning." The man sighed as he remembered that this would make it the 10th time in a row since Arlong's defeat that he needed to fix his door since Nejiko likes to kick it open. He looked at her and said, "Do you really need to kick it open every time?" The girl blinked before shrugging. "Sure, why not? I mean, it makes my entrance cooler." The man grumbled under his breath but smiled, for the girl was the closest thing he had to a daughter of his own. He took the newspaper, looked at it, and saw the wanted bounty posters as he exclaimed, "Wow, I knew that it worked fast, but not this fast." The girl replied, "Mouse Face must have pulled some strings to make it happen quicker, or it might have taken a while." Genzo hummed in approval as he hoped Nami was alright. Nejiko smiled as she looked outside the window, wondering what her sister was up to right now. On a ship in the East Blue, a bounty poster of Luffy was torn to a million pieces as a figure yelled in anger, "When I get my hands on that moron, I get to tear flashily into a million pieces just like this wanted bounty poster. How dare he and his lover get a higher bounty than myself?" The man was other than Buggy the Clown. He was currently on a bigger ship heading to Louge town. A slim figure sitting beside him smiled at Luffy's bounty before frowning at Robin's. Currently, on the Going Merry, the crew was lounging around. Luffy was eating a snack Sanji provided him. Robin was eating a piece of cake alongside Nami, who was drinking orange juice while the two girls chatted with each other. Zoro was training by lifting weights to make his strength greater. Usopp was finally working on some new types of pellets for his slingshot. Finally, Sanji was standing beside Nami's orchid as he growled, "No one will touch Nami Swan's tangerines as long as I live. I will protect them to the bitter end." Zoro from his training spot replied, "I'm sure you will, swirly brow. I'm sure you will." This made Sanji snap as he made his way toward him. The man yelled, "What did you say, shitty swordsman?" He ducked as Zoro swung the weight toward him. Zoro smirked, "You heard me. You'll only be good to protect that orchid. Go back to it." The two then began to fight each other, but were stopped when Nami punched them both, yelling, "Is it too much to ask for a moment of peace on this ship?" Luffy used this as an opportunity to sneak inside the orchid to grab a piece of fruit. Usually, he'd ask Nami, but she won't allow him anything even when he asked. Once he was close enough to pluck one. A fist made contact with his head. "And where do you think you're going?" He looked up to see Nami with her fist smoking. The boy then walked away with his head down. Nami shook her head at Luffy's sight before she heard a seagull's squawk. She looked at the bird that carried the newspaper. The bird offered her a newspaper which the girl accepted. She frowned when the price was too high for her liking, 50 bellas for the newspaper. This seems like a complete ripoff. The bird then flew away, leaving the girl to read what she bought. The girl skimmed through it till something slid through the paper and fell to the ground. She picked it up and her eyes widened once she saw the contents. What in the world is this? Everyone came barreling toward the girl as she slumped on the ground, saying, "Your first wanted bounty posters came out." This caused Luffy to cheer happily as he said, "Yeah, finally, I have a wanted bounty poster." He began to jump up and down as he said, "Can I see it?" Nami shook her head, "Not just you. Also, Robin has one." The mentioned girl smiled, making Nami scream in frustration. "How can you be happy about this?" Robin shrugged as she looked at her bounty poster. It was a picture of her taken somehow from her fight with Chu of the Arlong pirates. The picture showed her crossing her arms as she stood there with a smile. It was truly terrifying, the girl had to admit. She now looked at her name, Nico Robin. Bone Twister. Bounty. 22 million bellas. Status. Wanted dead or alive. Luffy hugged his girlfriend from behind as he said, "Good job, Robin. You really made a huge impact, and your bounty is really huge. I bet that you're going to be a great piece to finding the One Piece." The girl smiled as she snuggled into rubbing her head into his. Usopp grabbed his head as he yelled, "Are you crazy? This means that bounty hunters will now come after us. We have to find a way to hide this or we'll all pay the price for this. Come on, Robin, you must cut your hair or at least dye it to save us." Luffy flicked him on the head. "No way, Robin's hair is really nice. It reminds me of the night, and it sparkles in the sunlight. I can't allow her to ruin it. She is really beautiful. Plus, we can't chicken out every time we have a bounty. We're pirates. These things are normal for us." The girl in question blushed heavily, covering her face as she waited for Luffy to see his bounty poster. Zoro chimed from the side. "He's right. At least about the bounty part, she can cut her hair for all I care." He shook his head as he returned to his training. Usopp slumped down as a depressed aura surrounded him. He really hoped that listened to him, but he was startled out of heard Luffy yell, "Alright, it's time for my bounty." The boy looked at it and exclaimed, "Man, that's a huge one." Usopp dared himself to look at his captain's bounty and his eyes almost bugged out. It was the largest bounty he has ever seen a pirate have. Not even the likes of Arlong managed to have it. The bounty poster read, "Straw Hat. Monkey D. Luffy. Bounty. 30 million bellas. Status. Wanted dead or alive." Both Nami and Usopp hugged each other as they wailed in horror. "That's a huge number on the crew's back. We're doomed." Luffy chuckled while Robin hugged him from behind, saying, "I'm very proud of you, Luffy. You managed to score the highest bounty the East Blue has ever seen. I bet Grandpa must be very angry at you right now." The boy shivered at the mention of his grandpa. The boy chuckled awkwardly as he said, "Let's try not to mention him now. Why do we need to ruin the good times by talking about Gramps? I'm sure he's now running through the entire East Blue trying to get me and make me join the Marines." The girl giggled at the boy. She always saw Garp's heavy fist, but never got to experience it since she was his favorite grandchild, or her case honorary grandchild. Not that Garp minded much. Robin replied, "It's not his fault that you're always been mischievous and liked to play pranks on him every time he came to visit us." This made Luffy pout as Robin turned him toward her and kissed him. "But I like you the way you are, so don't change, Gummy Bear." The man smiled softly as he kissed her nose, saying, "Never, Sunflower." Nami on the side was now holding her stomach, trying as much as she can not to laugh at them. They were the weirdest couple she has ever seen. But seeing them flirt in other than life-threatening situations made them look fun, and she was laughing hard at Robin's nickname for Luffy. She looked at Robin as she elbowed her. "Gummy Bear, huh?" The girl blushed heavily as she said, "Well, his devil fruit is called the Gum Gum fruit. And he likes to cuddle when he sleeps, so I thought it was appropriate." Nami laughed even harder at this, making Robin pout as she resumed eating her cake. Sanji on the side cried hearing that Luffy got to cuddle Robin at night when they slept together, so he yelled, "Robin-chan, I can cuddle with you." He was silenced by a fist to the face as Zoro laughed at him. The cook stood up and glared at Luffy, who said, "Get your own girlfriend to cuddle with. It's not cool to harass other men's women." Sanji nodded his head, agreeing with the rubber boy. The man's eyes lit up with hope as he twirled toward Nami, who immediately shot him down, not even remotely interested. Once she the man's state, she felt pity, so she added, "But come back when I finish my world map. Maybe then I might take you on." Sanji smiled as he yelled happily, "Thank you, Nami Swan." Luffy then slammed his fist into his hand as he said, "Alright guys, let's talk about what we need to get when we reach Louge town." Everyone straightened up as Luffy explained, "We need to make a list such as supplies, personal needs, clothes since the weather there is kinda freaky, and most importantly." He then noticed Usopp, Zoro, Sanji, and Nami staring at him with weird looks, causing him to ask, "Is there something on my face?" The boy began to wipe it as the others nodded, while Robin frowned, knowing where this was going. Zoro explained, "No, it's just we didn't expect you to be that type of person. I mean, sure, you know some stuff, but we thought that you mostly read the paper. Didn't know that you plan ahead of time too?" The others nodded their heads, sharing the sentiment. Luffy sniffed sadly as he said, "I'm not dumb. It's just my devil fruit's drawback. I worked hard to fight it. I just have a learning disability." A dark cloud formed above him as it began to rain him. Robin glared at the four, saying, "Happy with yourselves now?" Each one of them at least had the decency to at least seem apologetic. Robin sat beside him as she comforted him, saying, "Don't worry, Gummy Bear. They're just a bunch of idiots. They don't know how smart you can be when you want to, but let's focus on what's important." The girl kissed his cheek as the boy smiled again. The boy stood up and said, "Well, where were we? Yeah, stuff the ship needs. We also need some wood and metal for repairs, some medicine. By the way, does anyone here have some medical knowledge? I mean, I know some basic stuff I was taught, but nothing too serious." Nami raised her hand. "Well, I can say that I have some medical knowledge, but I wouldn't call it very huge. It's modest at best, so we'll have to find one eventually." The boy nodded his head as he muttered something about an island full of doctors. Zoro then said, "I kinda need some new swords given that I only have one now, so once we land I have to go to a store to buy 2 new ones." Luffy nodded his head as he added, "I think I need someone to lend me some money." Luffy said, "Well, we still have some left from my money. We still have about 20 million bellas. We can give you about 5 million belly to buy some swords, but the rest we need to buy supplies." The swordsman nodded as Nami in the background seethed in anger, having lost an opportunity to enslave Zoro in her debt. Sanji then said, "Well, I checked the pantry a couple of moments ago. I say that we need some serious rations. And some extra given your special circumstances, so you won't die on us while sleeping. Everyone looked at Sanji while Luffy waved his hands at him to be quiet, only to be pinched by Robin, who told him he can't keep it a secret forever and that the crew needed to know. Usopp then said, "What condition? He seems healthy to me." Sanji shook his head saying, "Well, it's more of a drawback of his devil fruit. You see, the huge idiot body burns nutrients faster than all of us combined. For example, sitting still for him is like Moss Head doing weight training for hours on end." Usopp's eyes bugged out. "Wait, if that's the case, then how can you do all things we do without so much effort?" Luffy shrugged as he said, "Just got used to it, I guess." This made Usopp shudder to wonder how he got used to it. Zoro nodded his head with respect toward his captain. The man had such a huge drawback but kept going on to follow his dreams. Nami now felt even more grateful for what Luffy did for her. Luffy then clapped his hands as he said, "Alright, now who will take care of the clothes and medical stuff?" Nami then screamed, "I will take care of them." The boy quickly added, "You know I also mean clothes for us too, right?" The girl blinked in confusion as she rubbed the back of her head. "Yeah, of course, I knew that." Luffy's sweat dropped, sure that she didn't mean that. "So that leaves Usopp with the wood and metal." The long-nosed boy nodded his head, accepting the mission. Luffy then stood up, going to the rail of the Mary as he said, "Louge town, it's been a while." In the Louge town, a man was sitting in front of his desk as he was smoking cigars. The door to his room was then slammed open as a trooper entered it yelling, "Sir, we have new bounties and reports suggest that he's going to come here." The man nodded as he took the bounty posters and read them, Monkey D. Luffy and Nico Robin. They sure did quite the stir in the East Blue. He looked at his men and said, "Tell everyone to be on guard for their arrival." The Marine nodded as he ran outside while the man said, "No pirate will leave my town once they set foot in it. No one, back to Louge town." Luffy sat on top of Mary's sheephead as he looked forward. The boy sighed with happiness as he said, "Louge town, it's been a while since I last saw you. Back then, I was young and didn't get to do much, but this time I'm going to declare to that world that I will become the Pirate King." The boy shouted from the top of his lungs in absolute happiness. Nami came to him and said, "You seem excited today, Luffy. Did you read something in the paper?" the girl asked. She learned through the days that Luffy was smarter than he looked, and she didn't want to accidentally hurt his feelings anymore. The boy gave a toothy smile. "Well, I came here once with my brother Ace when we were trying to run away from my grandpa. We kinda became stowaways on a ship, and then we boarded another ship that took us to the West Blue. And then you knew what happened from there." The girl blinked as she rubbed her forehead. "Why did you even try to run away from your grandpa? He's the hero of the Marines, for God's sake." She then noticed the boy shiver as if he was going through some war flashbacks. The girl worried asked him, "Luffy, why are you shivering like that?" The boy chuckled, "Well, my grandpa always wanted to become a Marine, but I always wanted to become a pirate, so he threw me to live with mountain bandits in hopes that I'd change my mind and become a Marine." The girl looked at him with a very blank look, so he snapped his finger in front of her face. "Nami, are you there? Why are you sleeping with your eyes open?" The girl shook her head. "I think that you might have it rough as I am." The boy began to laugh as he waved her off. She couldn't help it anymore as she joined him in laughing. The girl asked, "Have you ever told Robin how you actually came to her island in the first place?" The boy remembered when he told Robin. The girl had her eyes shining with excitement as she bounced around from happiness, even though back then she was still very shy when it came to other people. The boy laughed. "She had the biggest smile on her face when I told, though after that she did reprimand me for doing something so stupid." Nami chuckled as she said, "I imagined that she would do something like that, but, shockingly, you left the island, to begin with. So what did he threaten you with that caused you to leave the island?" The girl chuckled in her mind as she thought that the man told the boy that he will take away meat from him. She was shocked by what she heard next. The boy crossed his feet as he said, "Well, he said that he was going to take us to some place named Impel Down." The girl took a moment to understand the new information as she choked out, "Really?" "Yeah," the boy replied with a goofy-looking smile before he reassured her, "but he didn't mean it. He just wanted to scare me and my brother so we stopped wanting to become pirates, and we become Marines instead." The boy began to laugh loudly as he remembered the man's expression when he found him on Ohara, though he cringed when he remembered the pain he experienced as punishment for his transgressions. The girl shook her head in amusement as she walked away, only to meet Robin, who was drinking tea from a cup. The girl asked her, "Did you have fun listening to us?" Robin lifted an eyebrow as she said, "I have no idea what you are talking about. Do you think that I have little faith in my boyfriend?" Nami tried to talk, but Robin cut her off as she smirked. "Or do you want to be in a relationship with both of us?" Nami's face turned red as she backed, stuttering, while Robin laughed at her. The orange-haired girl frowned as she pulled something out of her pocket. Robin looked at the notebook Nami pulled and read through its contents. A huge blush made its way on her face as she said, "How do you know about this? I never told anyone about this." Nami shook her head. "Robin, poor sweet innocent Robin, you went to a drinking contest with me. You should have known that I was planning to get some blackmail material out of you." Nami smirked as she said, Now this little stunt of yours will cost you about 50,000 bellas. The dark-haired lifted an eyebrow as Nami added, with an interest rate of 500%. Robin nearly fell forward as Nami went away laughing. Robin quietly muttered, she's ruthless when it comes to money. She was cut out of her musings as Luffy began to jump up and down yelling, Louge town. I can see it. We approaching it. The birthplace of the Pirate King. I can't wait to walk in it again. The girl walked over to him and asked him, ready for another adventure today? The boy flashed her a grin as both looked at the ever-approaching town. Once they were in the docks, Luffy said, all right, everyone knows what to do, so let's get moving and do what we want so we can leave and finish our stuff early so we can have some fun later on. Zoro jumped off the ship and walked into the town looking for a swords shop. He knew that there might be one given the place was the breeding ground of pirates who tried to enter the Grand Line. Usopp jumped down and walked to find a store where he can find some supplies for the ship and something for repairs if they ever needed it, though he doubted the Mary would need repairs. Sanji jumped and began to run to the food market because he thought the sooner he finished the sooner he can hang out with Nami who went to buy clothes. Luffy looked at Robin. Ready? The girl nodded as he exclaimed remembering something. Yeah, we might want to make a detour to a shop, because we're gonna need it for the long run. Meanwhile, inside the marine base in Louge town, the man from earlier was sitting reading the reports as one of his men came tumbling in. Sir, I have a report to tell you. The man had greenish-white hair. He was wearing a jacket that was opened leaving his chest exposed to the elements with some jeans. He was a bandolier that was filled to the brim with some kind of staff fitted to his back. The man was also smoking 2 cigars at the same time. He was the marine captain of Louge town who thanks to his efforts was able to reduce the number of pirates going to the Grand Line by a huge margin. He was the White Hunter. He was Smoker. He looked at his subordinate. What do you have for me? The men saluted him. Smoker, sir. We have reports saying that the straw hats were seen at the docks. Men are already at the port trying to search for the ship. Smoker nodded his head at the marine. The white-haired man stood up as he walked outside the room. I want patrols on the entire island to capture them, especially these two. He handed the marine the bounties of Luffy and Robin. The man looked around before rubbing his head, and by the way, where is Tashigi? The marine told him, sir, she went to bring her sword back from the shop. The man facepalmed at how his subordinate was obsessed with swords and collecting them like some glorified knives. The man then shrugged as he exited the shop, and went to search for Straw Hat Luffy himself. The man was now walking in the streets as he felt people's gaze on him as if he was some monster that was waiting to attack them. He then felt someone bump into him. He looked down to see a girl holding an ice cream cone that was now all over her pants. The man looked at her as she squirmed in fear before he crouched down and told her, I'm sorry that my pants ate your ice cream. He fished in his pockets and gave her some money. Go buy a new one. The girl smiled at him as she began to thank him. The man smiled knowing that not everyone on this island held that illogical fear of him. That lasted till the girl's mother came around and took her daughter away reprimanding her for talking with him in the first place. The man looked at the retreating pair with a flat expression as he sighed before shuffling away. He wondered what he ever did to have people this terrified of him before shrugging and carrying on with his path. Pirates aren't going to apprehend themselves, and he wasn't willing to allow his perfect record to be ruined because he allowed some rookie with his belt to blindside him. The man decided that he might go to his favorite bar to have a good cup of milk. The man chuckled as he remembered how the owner completely loathed him because he was destroying his business, and now he was his only customer, but in his mind, one customer is better than no customer. He continued his walk never noticing a straw hat wearing boy and a dark-haired girl moving past him. Back with Zoro, the man was looking for a sword shop but was having a very hard time. It was like the shops were moving around. The streets were swerving and moving around to no end. He felt that he will never be able to a shop to buy his swords from, but he heard something coming from down the street he was in. He looked and saw a girl being harassed by 2 men. One of them sneered, well, if it ain't the monster's personal lapdog. What are you doing around these parts of town? The other one carried on. Where's the big old monster that you usually hide behind? You know maybe if we beat you up we will force him to let our boss out. The girl calmly replied, my boss has more important stuff to do. I still can't believe that you never learned your lesson till now. But rest assured I will teach you how good manners are, so I'll be your opponent. The 2 men laughed at the girl telling her that she won't be able to do anything to them as they both attacked her. Zoro was about to go for his sword, but the girl suddenly reached for her own and cut the 2 men down shocking everyone who was watching the entire interaction. Sadly, at the last possible moment, the girl tripped and fell to the ground causing her to lose her glasses and everyone around her to laugh at her. The girl began to search across the ground for her glasses, so Zoro knelt down and grabbed him for her. The man handed her the glasses. Here, I think those are yours. The girl looked at him with a smile as she thanked him for the help, but the man couldn't reply as he was frozen. The girl's face reminded him too much of someone close to him. She reminded him of Kuina. He quickly walked away from her and nodded his head. The man continued his walk till he finally landed in front of a sword shop by sheer luck. The man entered it and looked around, and he thought that the shop has some decent enough swords that he could use. He looked at the owner who was about to fall over from boredom. Zoro then coughed into his fist, startling the man who looked at him with a smile. "How can I help today, sir? Here at my shop, we have the greatest swords that you can ever hope to come across." The pirate hunter nodded his head skeptically as he looked around and said, "I don't want anything special. I have around 5 million, so I think I muster much." The man in front of him deflated, hoping that he came across someone with good taste. He looked at the man, scanning him up and down. But then his eyes landed on the sword that the man held on his waist, and he couldn't believe what he found. He looked at Zoro and said, eyeing the sword carefully, "See, can I issctt the sword why you have on why your W waist?" Zoro sweat dropped at the man's sudden stutter but handed him the sword nonetheless, seeing no problem in that. The man surveyed the sword but was shocked to see someone like Zoro carrying it. He looked at the swordsman with greed in his eyes as thought of a way to scam the sword away from the man. "Look here, buddy, your sword is no good." Zoro tilted his head to the side as he said, "Excuse me, what did you say?" The man cleared his throat once more. "Well, you see, the sword that you're carrying is a good sword, but still, it will be a hamper on your journey. It is not the best thing you want to use when you're going on a long trip, so about you sell it for me. You want 2 swords from 5 million bellas. Well, now, you'll have some extra cash to use. I'll take it for 300,000 bellas." The man expected the swordsman to drool at his offer but was shocked by his response. Zoro gave him an unimpressed look. "Yeah, sorry, but it's not for sale." The man falls over from his chair, but he jumps back up in an instant as he grinned. "So, I see that you're a tough customer, huh? Well then, let's make it 500,000 bellas." Zoro sighed, dragging a hand across his face, and begins to look around the store for something worthwhile. Sure, he wasn't looking for anything fancy, but he didn't want something that might break at first use. The man bit his lip in anger as he yelled, "How about 650,000 bellas? I won't go any higher than that." The man looked at Zoro, hoping that he managed to convince him, but the swordsman didn't seem to care. The man began to sweat heavily, wondering how will he convince the man to let go of the sword he had his eyes on. The man was thrusted out of his thoughts as someone entered the shop, and he paled. It was the swords freak, or nerd as he liked to call her. He hoped she won't notice the sword Zoro was carrying, or she was going to ruin his business today. The girl looked at the shop before her eyes latched onto something. She squealed happily before tackling Zoro, who shoved her off. "Hey, what the hell, woman, get off." The girl stood in front of him and apologized. "I'm sorry, but I just wanted to see your sword." Zoro, now getting a closer look at the girl, froze up for a moment, before he regained his footing and handed her the sword as she practically drooled over it, causing the man to yell, "Hey, drool on your own sword." The girl looked at the sword as she said, "I can't believe it. I never thought I would be able to see it myself. It's the Wado Ichimonji. This is really exciting." Zoro himself was baffled as he mouthed out, "Wado." The man from the side smiled heavily as he said, "Yeah, I think I heard about it, but still I don't think it is an impressive sword." The man said, hoping for the girl to get the message that she should shut up. Sadly, the girl carried on, "Are you insane? This is word as of a high caliber. It is one of the greatest pieces of art ever made. It's one of the 21 Owazawa no grade swords. It's technically priceless. Anything under $1 million for it is a rip-off." The man yelled at Tashigi, "And now, thanks to your big mouth, I won't be able to buy it." He then grabbed something from under the counter and said, "Here, take your shigur, and get out of here so I can conduct my business in my peace." The girl stumbled backward, knocking some swords from their display, causing the man to facepalm. He looked at Zoro, "And you? Finish your shopping and get out already. We have from 50,000 bellas to 2.5 million bellas." The ex-pirate hunter looked at him and shrugged. He went to the 50,000 bellas as he felt something in this pile calling out to him. He then grabbed a sword and looked at it before grinning. "Not bad. I have to say that this sword has intrigued me." He looked at the owner and said, "You said that this pile is for 50,000 bellas. The owner didn't have much time to speak as Tashigi was already examining the sword and identified it as Sandai Kitetsu, and told Zoro to take it since it was a great deal. The owner then yelled, "No way in hell or heaven, I'm going to give you that sword. I take it back, that sword is not for sale." Suddenly the man's wife appeared behind him, and smacks him over the head as she yelled, "No, you're going to sell it or else." The man yelled back, "You don't get it, that sword is cursed." Zoro finished for the man. The man looked at him confused, asking him, "Did you know about the curse?" Zoro shook his head, but explained, "I can just tell by looking at it that it is cursed." The owner nodded his head. "Yes, it's true. While it is very great and the craftsmanship is amazing, this sword is heavily cursed. Anyone who ever had the displeasure of wielding it met a horrible and bloody end." The man finished as he lowered his head in silence. Tashigi looked at Zoro, and wondered what he'll do as he smirked, "I'll take it." The owner gasped as he stammered, "What? I just told you what happened. To everyone who owned it, I don't care." Zoro looked at it. "I want." He unsheathed the sword as he said, "But if you're not convinced, let's test something out. My luck against its curse." He then threw the sword in the air as he extended his arm. The sword began to slowly rotate around as the owner screamed, "Don't, the blade is too sharp. It will cut your arm off." Tashigi stood to the side too shocked to talk. The sword then began to make its way downward towards Zoro's arm. Moments became hours as the sword neared Zoro's outstretched arm. The sword lazily rotated around the arm as it finally embedded itself inside the ground. Everyone was shell-shocked at what happened except Zoro, who smiled. "It seems my luck wins out." The owner backed away from the scene as Zoro sheathed the sword and looked at Tashigi saying, "Hey you know about swords. Help me pick something else." The girl nodded absent-mindedly as she jumped on her feet and tried to help him, only for the owner to yell at them to stop before running inside his house. He came back with something covered inside a cloth. He then removed it, showing to Zoro his family heirloom sword, also known as Yubashiri, a sword known for being one of the 50 skillful grade swords. Zoro, although impressed, said, "As much as I want it, I don't think 5 million can afford it." The man quickly shook his head. "Who said I want to sell it to you? I want you to take it for free. I apologize for trying to trick you earlier and consider this as my apology to you. Please take it. I was never going to use, and it would have most probably collected dust in my attic till my death. At least now I know it's in good hands with you. In fact, you can take both swords for free." Zoro took the swords and walked out. The owner's wife came to him and asked, "Never have I thought I'd see someone as cheap as you give something for free. What happened?" The man smiled as he said, "They say that the sword chooses its master. When the young man tamed Sandai Kitetsu, I know he was meant for greatness, so I only wanted to aid him." In the end, Zoro exited the shop with his new swords, not even paying a penny. He looked to his side and saw that Tashigi was walking with him with a thoughtful expression on her face. He said, "If you have something to say, speak your mind." The girl blushed as she fidgeted. "No, nothing, it's just that you remind me of someone I read about." Zoro arched an eyebrow. "Really, and who would be that person?" He wondered if there was someone he looked like to remind the girl of him. Kinda like how he felt toward her and Kuina. The girl shook her head. "It's that you're carrying 3 swords. You remind me of Zoro the pirate hunter." Zoro blinked as his sweat dropped, since somehow the girl hasn't noticed that she was talking to the man himself. Zoro continued along with her. "What do you think of him?" The girl balled her fists. "I really despise him. He's using beautiful swords for greedy purposes. I want to take away a sword worthwhile from him." Zoro hummed at her. He looked and saw 2 Marines race up to her saying, "Ma'am, Captain Smoker wants to know where you have been." Zoro panicked as he slowly walked away from them, leaving the 3 to talk alone. In another part of town, Nami was inside a shop trying on different pairs of clothes. She looked at the huge pile that she managed to gather. Of course, most of them were for her and Robin, and a few scrubs for the boys. Unlike the girls, they didn't need many clothes to work with. The owner was beaming with happiness as he saw Nami walking toward the buying booth, and said, "Are you going to buy all those, young miss?" Nami smiled. "Of course. What did you think I was going to do? Try them on for my own personal amusement, and then leave the store without buying any." Although on some level that was true, if she wasn't ordered directly by Luffy to buy clothes, she would have done that. The man smiled. "All right. Let's see how much we have." He was stopped by Nami, who raised her hand and said, "Before that, I need a discount. I mean, I bought all these clothes." The man looked and nodded at her logic. He grinned. "Anything you say, miss." She then slipped him a paper. He looked at it and his eyes bulged out as he yelled, "What, 90% discount?" And with that began a huge argument. He ended up losing, with Nami having an even higher discount as she left the store satisfied. Nami walked to an infirmary looking for some medication to buy. She was thankful that Luffy gave her the extra money, so she can buy them. The crew needed to have some until they had a full-time doctor on their crew, or they won't be able to make it far in the Grand Line if the stories she read from Robin's mother's journals are true. Somewhere else, Sanji has just finished a cooking competition, with the grand prize being a huge elephant tuna fish. He saw a beautiful lady walking by and whistled at her. At the same time, Usopp also managed to gain something. He went into a sharpshooting contest with a man known as Big Daddy, and utterly failed. In the end, it turns out that the man knew his father Usopp, and respected him a lot after a fight that broke out between the two back when he was in the Marines, and ended up with Usopp winning and sparing his life when Usopp saw that the man had a small daughter. In the end, the man handed him his goggles, and Usopp was happy to have them since they helped increase his accuracy in fighting. The boy then began to visit shops and buy supplies for Mary, in case she was damaged. He bought a bunch of wood, nails, paint, and some iron straps at a very cheap price. A while back, Luffy and Robin just exited a store as they bought something very necessary for their trip to the Grand Line before Robin grabbed Luffy's hand and they began to stroll around together. The couple watched some fish swim in an aquarium, bought some food, and also had a very fun ride inside a carnival ride that the city had for celebratory occasions. Luffy laughed. "That was really fun. We have to do it again. It was awesome." The girl beside him giggled. Even though this was the second time that Luffy visited the city, he acted as if it was the first time he laid foot on it. She was tempted to know what he exactly did the first time he came here. The girl inquired, "Luffy, what did you do the first time you actually came here?" The boy blinked as he sat down in the middle of the road. Ace mostly walked around dragging me. He didn't allow me to do anything, so I wouldn't be caught or forced to go back to Gramps so he can train us. It was really scary running around like that, but it was a good thing because I met you. He jumped up as he hugged her, making her blush at the public display of affection. The girl hugged him back, saying, "I wouldn't want it any other way." The boy then saw something that caught his attention. It was an old bar that had a sign that said, "Gold Roger Bar," on the entrance. The boy smiled, grabbing his girl as they walked inside. "I hope this place has stories about the Pirate King." Robin chuckled. "Well, it is his hometown. I bet that have multiple stories about him before he set sail." They both reached the bar, which seemed old and worn down. The only person working here was an old man who looked at them and said with a frown on his face, "What do you people want?" Luffy asked him, "Are you the owner of this bar?" The man nodded as he answered, "Yeah, but this isn't a place for kids, so please leave. It's closed anyway, so get out." Luffy tilted his head, "So you're out of business?" The man replied, a little bit frustrated, "I never said that. We're closed, so please get out." Robin, being the peacemaker, quickly interjected, "We're sorry, sir, but my boyfriend here is a big fan of Gold Roger. He wanted to see if there were any stories he can find here about the Pirate King before he visited the execution stand where Roger took his last breath." The man eyed them wearily as he was caught off guard when Luffy yelled, "What's that? Is it a skull? It's really huge. And what happened to it, and why it's here?" The girl couldn't help but laugh at her boy Fr. The man laughed as he began explaining the story behind the head. He told Luffy how the head belonged to a giant killer who have killed hundreds of pirates. He told him how the man met Roger and met his end facing him. He carried on telling Luffy stories of different fearsome men who faced off against Roger only to meet their demise. Luffy began to clap his hands as he said, "That's so cool and awesome." He looked down at the ground. "I wish I was around to see him." The old man chuckled as he said, "I have to say that I'm a little bit happy that people your age still care about the old times." Luffy laughed, "I really respect the Pirate King. Pirates should be just like him. That's why I set sail to become the Pirate King." The man across him for a moment swore he saw Roger, causing him to speak in hidden amusement. "You can't just say something like that in here." Luffy shrugged nonchalantly, "Well, I'm just saying the truth after all." The man laughed harder as he looked at Robin. "And what are you planning to be, little missy, his pirate queen?" The girl, for all her calm demeanor, began to blush different shades of red as she stammered for an answer. But Luffy replied on her behalf, saying, "Of course. I mean, what's a pirate king without his queen?" The girl began to hit him in the shoulder as he laughed. The old man chuckled as he moved to the bar. "Well, I have to say that you both made my day, so I'll shut a little later today." He then handed them drinks and guided them to the execution platform as they went out. A moment later, he heard footsteps. He turned, hoping to see the young kids he met, but was met by someone else. He was the reason his business was failing in the first place. Smoker strolled in as he greeted the man. "Hey there, old timer." The man frowned at him. "Get out. Haven't you destroying my business made you happy?" Smoker chuckled. "You can't blame me if the pirates that come here are weak. I mean, if they're good as they sound, they wouldn't be defeated so quickly." The Marine shook his head. "Anyway, I want some rum." The man yelled back, "I don't serve your kind here. Go drink somewhere else and let me have my peace. You already cause enough problems for me and my business." Smoker laughed even harder as the smoke from his cigars grabbed a bottle of rum and directed it toward him. He opened the bottle and drank it in one go. He then noticed 3 cups on the bar and said, "Well, it seems today you had some customers. That's new." The old man frowned. "What, so now I'll be persecuted if I made ends meet? You marine brats are truly becoming a handful." He walked outside the bar as he began to remember when he was just a young kid and saw the execution of Gold Roger. Until this day, he couldn't forget the man's last moments. Even when the blades were about to skewer him, he went out with a huge smile on his face. Meanwhile, Luffy and Robin had finally made their way to the execution stand, with the former being excited to no end to go on it and sit where the Pirate King had his last moments without being interrupted by someone. The boy looked at Robin and smiled a toothy grin. "Look at me, Robin. I'll make history today." The boy quickly walked to the platform, scaled it, and sat where the pirate sat at his last moment. He looked around admiring the view as he said whimsically, "So that's what the Pirate King saw before he died." He jumped up as he yelled, "That's so cool." He remembered something he wanted to do once he came here, but Ace for the first time stopped him so they attract attention. He wasn't there, so the boy declared as loudly as he can, "I'm going to become the Pirate King." The boy immediately began to laugh, with his girlfriend chuckling down beside the platform. He was knocked from his musings as a police officer came and yelled, "Hey kid, come down from here. This is world government property." The boy smiled cheekily as he said, "I don't think so, but thanks for the warning. I'll come down when I feel like it. Now let me enjoy the view." The police officer was about to yell back, but he was knocked out when a giant mace smashed him in the head, knocking him into blissful unconsciousness. The hooded figure who knocked him out looked at the boy and said with a smile, "Do you remember me, Luffy?" Both the boy and Robin looked at her and tilted their heads in confusion, not having the slightest clue who this person might be. Luffy replied, "Lady, do I know who you are?" He looked at the woman as he tried to remember her, but he couldn't. The woman touched her face. "You seem you forgot me. But how can I forget you? The first man who ever punched me." The woman smirked at him. She then removed her hood, revealing a beautiful young woman as she said, "Don't you remember me, the beautiful Alvida?" The boy looked around, but I don't see any whales around. Let alone jumbo-sized whales. A huge tick mark formed on Alvida's forehead. I was never a whale, to begin with. The woman then said, "When your hands touched me, sending me flying, I landed on an island where I ate the slip fruit, which made me a slippery human. This caused all of my fat to go off my body, but that also cost me my freckles, as you can see." She then pointed at him saying, "But now I came here to claim you as my man." The boy frowned, "But I already love someone." Alvida frowned as she looked hatefully at Robin. "I see that your heart is already occupied, so why don't I make it vacant?" she said as she raced toward Robin. The girl tried to grab her with her powers, but with Alvida's new powers, she managed to free herself as the woman smirked. "I'm just too slippery to be grabbed, sweetheart." The girl jumped away as Alvida swung her mace down, striking the ground. Luffy panicked as he tried to jump, but he was suddenly strapped down to the execution platform as another figure down there made himself present. He walked forward as he said, "Do you remember me, Straw Hat?" Luffy's reply came as blunt as ever, "Should I know who you are?" The figure down there began to jump down and up, yelling, "How can you forget about me, Buggy the Clown, the flashiest pirate to ever roam the seas?" Luffy shrugged a little as he tried to remove the shackles that were holding him down to help Robin, but he began to feel his energy being drained. He looked up and saw Kabji, who said, "Hey there, how's life treating you?" Luffy yelled at him, "Hey, let me go. I had to go down there and help Robin. And then I had to go and beat that big red-nosed idiot down there." Luffy then recollected something as he looked at Buggy, saying, "I remember you. You're that Biggie the Mime." This caused Buggy to slam head first into the ground at the insult to his nose, and his name, "It's Buggy, and today is your last day on Earth." He looked around and yelled, "Men, we sure no one leaves the area. Today, we'll have a flashy execution of Straw Hat Luffy." Smoker was now strolling the shops of Louge town when one of his men came up running to him. "Sir, there's been a huge pirate activity at the execution platform." The man nodded his head, "And one of them is Straw Hat Luffy and Buggy the Clown. The reports say that Buggy the Clown has surrounded the people to make them watch him execute Straw Hat Luffy." This caused the man to spin around. "I want every available unit to make its way toward the town center quickly." The man wasn't about to allow someone to die, even if he was a pirate. In the mall, Zoro managed to meet with Nami, Usopp, and Sanji. Zoro looked around and said, "I thought we'd meet the lovebirds by now. Where could they be?" Sanji, who was hefting a huge fish and large bags of food, said, "I bet they're inside a restaurant eating something. They were the only ones who weren't assigned to bring anything." Usopp nodded as he struggled to carry the ship's supplies and Nami's shopping bags. The orange-haired girl was about to say something when they heard someone talk to another. "Did you hear what are they saying? Someone is trying to execute the new rookie in the town square." This made the Fore's eye ward the town square to save their captain. In the town center, Smoker was already positioned as he asked his men, "What are the field reports?" One of his men, who was looking through binoculars, said, "Sir, the troops are beginning to arrive." The man then growled, "Where's Tashigi when you need?" He was cut off when the woman made herself known as she said, "Smoker sir, what's happening in the town center?" The man shook his head. He wanted to berate his subordinate, but said, "Buggy the Clown has taken the people hostage, as he wants him to watch as he executes the new rookie Straw Hat Luffy." He then yelled in anger, "And where the hell have you been?" Where hell was being raised on Earth. The girl began to stammer as she tried to find an excuse, but Smoker lifted his hand, silencing her as he continued to watch what was happening. Back at the execution platform, Buggy now had his foot on Luffy's head as the boy said, "Look, I'm sorry, but can you let me go?" Buggy for a moment said, "Yeah, sure, why not, I'll let." He then backpedaled, "Like hell, I'll let you go." The clown man took a deep breath as he said, "If I let you go, you won't be able to see the execution." The boy smiled. "Who is being executed?" Buggy laughed, "You are being executed, you moron." Down in the streets, Robin was still facing Alvida. The iron mace holding woman said, "It looks like this is the end of the road for you, sweetheart." Robin smiled as she crossed her, "I don't think so." Many arms sprouted from Alvida's body as they began to hold onto each other. The arms began to slowly, but surely bend Alvida's back till a deafening crack was heard. Robin looked up to see Luffy struggling to get free with Buggy standing above with a sword. She tried to go to help him, but she ducked as a blade went above her, managing to cut some hair. She looked and saw Kabji, who smirked, "I'm sorry darling, but I can't allow you to interfere. Perhaps after this, we can get to know each other." Robin went into a fighting position as she heard fighting coming from the end of the street. She looked only to see Sanji and Zoro making their way through as Zoro shouted, "This execution is over." On the platform, Luffy struggled to escape from the chuckles that were draining his energy as he yelled, "Let me go." Buggy replied, "Never, now, prepare to be executed flashily." Luffy looked down to see his friends arrive. This filled him with so much confidence that he yelled, "I'm going to become the Pirate King." Buggy then lifted the sword as he said, "Any last words?" Luffy only grinned. Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Nami, and Robin. His smile grew wider as he finished. "I guess I'm going to die now." The clown man then lowered his blade, shocking everyone as Luffy's crew cried out to him, as a storm began to happen above their heads. Smoker watched the scene unfold as he muttered quietly, "He's smiling." Suddenly, before the blade can make contact with Luffy's neck, lightning struck the platform, burning it to a crisp to shock of everyone. Beside the rubble of the platform, Luffy retrieved his straw hat, smiling like a loon. "I guess I live." He was tackled by a hug from Robin. The girl looked at him as she demanded, "Never worry me like that ever again, got it?" The boy nodded as he pecked her lips, but Zoro came and said, "I respect that you like each other, but the Marines are onto us." Both of them looked and joined the others as they began to run toward the ship, while other pirates were being captured as Smoker arrived on the scene. On their way, they were stopped by a blue-haired girl who was holding a sword as she glared at Zoro. The girl yelled, "So you're a pirate now, aren't you, Zoro?" Zoro calmly unsheathed his sword and readied himself to fight. "Get going, I'll deal with this myself." Sanji tried to say something, but Zoro stopped him. "This is a thing between swordsmen." The others then left as Tashigi said, "Hand them over." The swordsman lifted an eyebrow as she explained, "Your swords. You're not worthy of them. Hand over Wado, Sandai, and Yubashiri." The man frowned, "In your wildest dreams perhaps, but this is the real world." This caused Tashigi to unsheath her own sword. The two began to exchange blows, till Zoro finally managed to defeat her, but instead of dealing the finishing blow, he chose to walk away from her. This caused the girl to yell, "Hey, what do you think you're doing turning your back on me before cutting me down?" She clenched her fists. "Is it because I'm a woman?" She gripped her chest as she explained, "My entire life I've been looked down on for being a woman who holds a sword, but for you to not take me seriously is beyond any form of disrespect." Zoro then turned around and yelled, "I don't care you're a woman. Your existence is the reason that I'm bothered with you." The man looked her in the face as he shouted, "Your face is just like a friend of mine who died years ago, and now you're spewing the same things she used to say, so stop that, you copycat." This caused Tashigi to yell back at him, starting a back and forth shouting match, much to the Marines' confusion as they couldn't tell what was happening. Back in the town square, a man stood alone in a hood. He smiled as he looked at the sky. "So you chose to be a pirate, good choice." Back with Luffy and the others, the boy was running with the others till a back landed in front of them. Smoker then disembarked from it as he looked at both Luffy and Robin. "Straw Hat, Bonebreaker, I suggest you come quietly with me. The name's Smoker and that's the last name you'll hear before you're taken to prison." The man then turned his hands into smoke as Sid raced toward Luffy and Robin, managing to capture them both. Sanji tried to attack him, but his leg passed through him. Luffy looked at Robin and used his hands to free her. The boy threw her away only to be captured again by Smoker, who said, "Resistance is futile. I ate the smoke fruit. It made me a smoke human." Luffy tried to punch him, but Smoker simply turned into smoke before dragging Luffy and pinning him face down, reaching for his staff. "It appears both of your luck ends here," he said, dragging Robin closer to Luffy. As he touched his staff, someone grabbed his hand saying, "Maybe not." Smoker looked behind him and was shocked. What are you doing here? The entire government is hunting you." Robin looked at the figure with wide eyes, not understanding why he was helping them, but she wasn't about to look a horse gift in the mouth, while Luffy was confused. The man ignored Smoker as he said, "The world awaits your answer." He lifted his hand and a huge gust of wind blasted through the area, carrying Luffy and his crew to the ship. Smoker looked at the mysterious individual. "Why did you help him?" The figure asked him, "Is there a reason for a man not to set sail?" Lighting flashed above both of them, but when it went away the man wasn't there anymore. On the ship, Zoro, Sanji, Luffy, and Robin landed as Nami said, "What took you so long?" Luffy shook his head as he yelled, "Never mind that, let's set sail quickly." Everyone then jumped and began to sail away from Louge town. The crew looked at the black sky as they sailed further away from Louge town. They knew that they had a couple of days till they reached the entrance to the Grand Line, but they could wait. Nami then asked, "So, what do we do now?" Sanji snapped his fingers as he brought a barrel. This is a tradition among sailors. They put their feet on the barrel and they declare their dreams before smashing it. Luffy nodded his head as he was the first one to say, putting his foot to become Pirate King. He was followed by Robin, who said, "To find the Void Century." Then Zoro slammed his foot down to become the world's greatest swordsman. Sanji then put down his own foot, saying, "To find the All Blue." Nami smiled happily, "To draw the world's map." Usopp finally put his foot as he squeaked out, "To become a brave warrior of the sea." They all then lifted their feet and smashed the barrel. Tuggy looked with a smile at his ship. The winds that blew through Louge town have managed to free him too. He looked at his crew and shouted, "After Straw Hat Luffy." Back at Louge town, Smoker looked at where the Straw Hats sailed, and said, "We're going after them." One of his subordinates tried to stop him, but he backed down. Tashigi silently glared at where the ship went, only thinking about how Zoro insulted her honor as a swordsman or swordswoman in her case. Smoker ordered one of his men, "Ready my ship. I'm going to the Grand Line after him."